All right, you guys able to hear me? If you are, react in the chat somehow. Testing. All right, great. So we know audio works. Still got the. You should see the start streaming soon. Uh, that's being broadcast. We're just waiting on Eric here to get back into Hangouts. And Eric, are you with me? All right. Thank you very much for that feedback. Eric has been joining in the Hangouts, but I cannot hear him for some reason. So I started a new session of Hangouts, and we'll see if we can get his audio. He's kind of slow waiting. Eric, can you hear me? All right. As usual, because I am absolutely cursed to do streaming, everything breaks. And it's always something different. It's never the same. And for whatever reason, just talking for half an hour with Eric, and now I can't talk to him. Um, I don't know what the deal is. It's like I don't understand why this curse happens. Um, oh boy, it's very difficult to manipulate things behind the scenes and try to get things under control when you're trying to also coordinate with another person. So, how is everyone doing? That's a good comment. Took away his Milky Ways. uh, Maverick, good to see you. Um, yeah, streams are acting up for a lot of people. This could be the case with me. The fact that you guys can hear me, though, shows me that the stream is working. I think this is an issue. Um, Dang it, Eric's such a boomer. I think this is an issue with Hangouts, and Eric doesn't even know how to start a Hangout. So, gosh dang it. Uh, well, we're prepared to do this, obviously. I'm going to have to give Eric some technology lessons. I appreciate that you can hear me perfectly clear. My co host Eric is fumbling around his phone right now. Trying to get him into the Hangouts. He can join. I think he's doing something wrong when I can't see what he's doing. So um, my guess is that he has another app on his phone that's hogging his audio channels or settings. Um, and so when he joins within the Hangouts, it doesn't activate his mic. And I'm guessing it's because he had Discord running. I don't even know if Eric can hear me in the YouTube. Eric, if you can hear me, you need to learn how to use Hangouts. Cannot wait for Eric to hear my new videos since you said that, Ash, says Christy Miller. Do you have a new video about something? Okay, so Eric is in Hangouts. Presumably he's talking, but I can't hear him. So, Eric, I believe you can hear me. Go into the Discord and we'll see if we can do this that way since you know how to use Discord. I guess we'll be experimenting with this faster than I anticipated. All right, testing 1, 2. This is Ash on the mic. Eric, say something so the audience can hear you.
Hello.
That was astounding. And audience, did you hear Eric's hello? Please respond if you did, so we can get this shit show started. The bad thing about doing the stream is it's on a delay. So I ask a question and then I have to wait like 5 extra seconds for people to actually hear it through the YouTubes. They said they can hear you faintly, Eric.
Oh, should I be using my microphone or talking into my phone?
I don't know what you're doing. Let me see if I can turn user volume up here on my side, and that might help. All right. Now say something.
No, I'm saying if we're doing it this way, should I speak into the microphone or my phone?
You should speak into whatever device you're using for the Discord.
Okay. Is it better now?
Let's ask the audience. Audience, how is Eric sounding to you? Maverick says, "There you go." I'm gonna assume.
Okay, well I can't okay, so I can't see the chat or anything. Should I if I get out of if I get off of Google Hangouts and just go to YouTube, will
You sh-
that work for me?
you're not in Google Hangouts.
That answers my question.
You're in Discord. Christy
Okay.
now says you
Well,
still sound faint. This is,
I wasn't talking loud. How about now?
you sound good to me. It's just I have to rebroadcast you through, and it causes problems sometimes.
Okay, I'm trying to pull up the chat from.
Damn, got a loud microphone on my side here, or microphone motorcycle. Yes, because we haven't started the stream. We're still booming over here.
If we haven't started the stream, how can they hear me?
Well, technically, it started. We haven't officially like
Okay.
started.
Yeah.
This is like all the curtains haven't opened yet. Everyone can hear us behind the curtains talking. All right, so I'm gonna turn myself down a little bit. This will allow users to turn their volume up, and hopefully that will equalize us.
Well, let's hope.
We can only hope that maybe this works.
So obviously something has changed because I didn't do anything different than I did the other night.
Well, they're telling you to boost your microphone. You're on a phone. That's part of the problem, I think. Um, I'm needing some feedback if we sound at least somewhat equal. So, like I said, people can at least raise their volume because I don't want to be screaming loud and you're quiet, so people can't turn their volume up.
You know, I'm up as loud as I can go.
Yeah. All right. Well, Christy says she subscribed to over 200 people, and half of them are trying to live to work the Discord, OBS, something else for streams. So normally for you guys, I do this. I do this OBS all the time. I've always done my streams through OBS, and I do it through Hangouts. But for whatever reason, I can't talk on Hangouts with Eric because technology fails. It's this mutant power. Um, so how do we sound relative to each other? Is it close enough in volume? I'm not getting any responses in the chat. I need I need a response. Somebody. Oh, you know what I can do? I forgot. I got my iPad right here. All right, Eric, go ahead and say something.
Okay. What's going on, everyone?
All right, beautiful. We are equalized. I should have done that sooner. Um, okay, so. All right, beautiful. Oops. I'm going to turn that down. All right, so this is what's going on. I turned myself down so that you guys can raise your volumes. I just tested on my iPad, watching it on YouTube myself, and I could hear both myself and Eric at the same volume. So that's what you should all be hearing. So let's get the show on the road. What do you say?
I think he agrees.
I think my dog needs to get beat. Hold on 1 second. All right, here we go. We're going to start this show.
Now, can I get the chat on my phone without losing, the voice on my phone?
Eric, we're starting the show. Hey everyone, you're watching Ash on Comics Live with co-host Eric Breen. Sorry for the extended delay. It looks like we're at the 31-minute mark. And it's good to see you all here. It's good to see patience. I am super sorry. I feel like a total boomer. Eric, how does being a boomer feel?
Old.
Um, all right. So, Comics Quirks is telling us to turn up the mics. I can't because that's the way it is. You got to turn your volume up. Eric is quiet, so I had to turn myself down. And that's where we're at. So, how are things going with you, buddy?
Just being befuddled by technology again.
We're going to have like a training session or something behind the scenes.
Well, at least I'm not the only one having problems with this stuff today.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And fortunately, we got some viewers on that are patient with us and aren't just like, F these guys and going somewhere else. That's very encouraging. I thank everyone for that. Have you tweeted out that we're online, Eric? Because I know a lot more people like you than they like me.
I can do that now.
Okay. That always helps to let people know. You have a big fan base. I'm just saying, like a lot of people know who you are.
Well, I hope I don't get disconnected doing this.
What? Can we have nowhere to go but up, buddy. Do you have a computer in your house?
Yeah,
Can you tweet on your computer?
I never have.
You've never tweet. Oh my goodness. I need to like take a vacation, like a 3-day weekend, fly out to your house and give you some millennial lessons.
Yeah. No, apparently I don't. Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, well, Eric figures out how to use Twitter. I appreciate things everyone's going on. Today is sort of the dry run of live streaming with Eric and I. I just wanted to get out there, use the system now that YouTube has decided to unfathomably, how's the word? Unfathomably. Anyways, I don't understand why YouTube decided to say you can't connect with Hangouts anymore. Like why? It's like Hangouts is a Google program. YouTube is a Google program. You'd think they would just work together, and you'd want to keep it that way. But no, we're going to force you to use this middleman called OBS, which I appreciate that. I like OBS when I can get to work right, but it's so complicated. So I hope everyone else is doing okay. I know some people reported that lots of other streams are having problems as well. That sucks. I know a lot of boomers uh, are trying to figure this stuff out. I know England Teen is trying to figure this stuff out. I was on watching his stream earlier today. Eric, are you done with Twitter yet?
No, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Are you able to see YouTube?
Yeah, give me a second.
All right, so if you're able to see YouTube, there's just a share button right there from YouTube. This is fantastic radio, by the way. I'm so glad that we decided to do a dry run. This would suck if it was our first actual.
Wouldn't it, though?
Fantastic radio, by the way. I'm so glad that I gotta mute myself here.
All right, it's done.
So we've got some things to talk about. Eric, have you been reading the House of X and Powers of X?
I have not.
And why is that?
Well, I pretty much am away from reading in continuity Marvel.
Oh, and why is that?
Well, they kind of lost me during the all new, all different era. And yeah, I don't like the direction of any of the books. None of them are, what I particularly want. And yeah, I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on. It's just that I don't think that any of the characters, or very few of the characters, are written the way that I would like them to be written. And, it's just kind of a personal choice at this point.
Gotcha. I actually identify with that quite a bit. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Not dating quite as far back into comic history as yourself, but I think I came in comics in the mid 80s. I have gone back and collected X-Men into probably the late 70s era. That's kind of where my knowledge of comics really starts. The Frank Miller Daredevil run, the Walt Simonson Thor run, Chris Claremont taking over X-Men. Right, that late 70s to early 80s, and some of those runs into the mid 90s, like with X-Men. One of the three of the most iconic runs in comics ever were right then, at the same time, along with other great things that were happening in comics as well. Like I know DC. I'm not a big DC guy, at least in that era. So I know there's probably some great things that were happening then that I know you're really aware about. But man, when I came back into comics, I didn't start buying comics until 2018, but I kind of came in the scene in 2017, and I was just I could not believe what a shit show Marvel was. And so when I decided to start buying comics again, I just went into DC. And DC, it made me a fan. I was, it kind of won over a lot of prejudices that I had. And, but lately, Marvel has been doing a few things. Like it's kind of like a little baby, right? That's like crawling around all the time. And then all of a sudden you see him take a couple of steps and you're like, oh my goodness, baby's about to start walking. I feel like Marvel's kind of at that stage right now with a couple of their books. What do you think? What's your observation on that?
Well, first I'm going to say, since I can't type from where I am, thank you, The End of Thought. Don't know why, but I'll take it. And Maverick MX, I agree with you on Roy Thomas, although I'd probably rate him slightly higher than Claremont just because I'm a fan of the older stuff. But that's here's the thing. 10, 12 years ago, Marvel, I thought they were pretty much firing on all cylinders. I wasn't again, some of the characters weren't what I remembered, and there was too much hero fighting hero, but they had a really good stable of good comic book writers, and probably the last good stable of writers Marvel had. And somewhere like between 2012 and 2014, the Brubakers, the Hickmans, those guys, all left, and they got replaced by pretty much anybody that would work for minimum wage. The you know the books became way more political, way more social justice, and it seemed like every writer was just writing themselves into their characters. And for someone that's been reading regularly for almost 45 years, I looked at what they were doing now and said, do I want to read this stuff, pay more than I've ever paid for a book, get angry more often than not feel like I'm getting anything? Or can I just go back and read the stuff again that I know I'm going to like? Now, DC, on the other hand, they at least, when they started Rebirth, started giving the fans more of what they wanted, or at least their longtime fans. Marvel seems to have gone out of their way to push their longtime fans out and basically create an entirely new fan base. It was like, if you've been reading before, if you wanted to stay, well, okay, but you're going to have to accept the new status quo, and I chose not to.
Well, as as I said, I can completely relate because I came back into comics and I was like, what? Why is Thor? Why is Thor a woman? Why is Cap a Nazi? What is going on here? Why is Wolverine two women? And it's not enough to turn Wolverine into a woman. They had to make him into two women. And I was like, what is going on here? And then on top of all that, on top of the gender politics, all these things that everyone's aware about by now, I don't need to preach anyone. You flip open these books and the art is horrendous, and the writing is like high school fanfic at best. Some of these books, I know you're a really big fan of American icon. What's her name? Gabby Rivera.
That's that national treasure, Gabby Rivera.
That's it, national treasure. But I'm not. I read that book and I was like, that was just explaining everything that was wrong with Marvel. But I made a lot of friends since coming back into comics, and getting the internet is it's kind of a dumpster fire sometimes, but it allowed me to meet people like you. All these people in the chat right now all are great people, and it's been a pleasure kind of re-experiencing that enthusiasm I used to have. It's not as good as it used to be, where you could just pick up a comic that interested you and you're probably going to get something decent. Nowadays you have to sort of sift through all the stuff and go, is this going to be okay? It's like a landmine, it's a minefield. But people like Sergeant Bats, everyone knows Sergeant Bats. If you know my channel, we're closely tied. He got me to read Daredevil, and man, I know you don't read Daredevil because you don't read the continuity stuff, but I kind of, and this is a personal choice, everyone should do what they want to do, but I kind of felt like, if you're going to do good comics again, I want to support that, because I want people to realize, I want the publishers to realize, oh, hey, when we did the characters right and we wrote good stories and we had good art, they responded. Right? It's if we as fans respond in a positive way when they do it right, then they have no excuse to do it wrong. But when we don't, if they just do it right and we don't respond, like what's happening with Hawkman, we have no excuse to bitch. It's like, why should they answer to the fans if the fans aren't going to answer back? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first I want to say that Maranya, I could not agree with you more. That is a shame, but those are the people that Marvel is cultivating to be their new audience. And I agree with you. I said, everything I've heard about Daredevil is, by all accounts, it seems to be a very good book. I just, I said, and I thought about picking that up again, but one of the things with me is, I'm kind of an in for a penny, in for a pound when it comes to the big two.
Mm-hmm.
I need the universes to be as coherent as possible. I don't hold any other shared universes from other companies to the same standard that I do the big two, and that's why when Rebirth took off, I was I got up to about 20 DC titles a month again over about a 6-month period.
Yeah.
And then you know who came all over everything. I mean, you know, and within 2 months, I was down to 0 again. That's kind of where I am with Marvel. That
Yeah.
yes, Daredevil is a very good book. People like the Immortal Hulk. It's not, that book isn't for me, but I know a lot of people really like it. I know a lot of people like, you know, Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man. But even reading those, the feel of it, you know, I I don't want to probably be pissing people off with this, but Nick Spencer at his best on Spider-Man wouldn't be noticed if you plugged him in anywhere in the first 300 issues. And
Right. That's kind of how
if
my
I'm going to
feeling
get
is too.
back into Marvel, I need more than just, well, this is the best you're going to get now, so I guess I'll just have to take it. Well, comics are too expensive to hate read or just to read to say that I'm into it.
Mm-hmm.
But something else I was going to say, as far as what you're talking about, getting to meet some great people through this. I said that's the one way to look at it is that if comics had stayed good, well, we wouldn't be talking right now. We wouldn't all know each other, and that's kind of like the lemonade out of the lemons that the comic book industry's become. And so I mean I'm grateful for that. And now if we just get the big two rolling again, it would be even better. But at least something good came of the downturn that the industry took. Was it gave rise to people like Anglin, Captain Frugal, Captain Cummings, and and then the rest that followed. And it's it's great to have people from all over, all walks of life and all over the country to share the hobby with. Unfortunately, there's not as much good to share as there used to be.
Um, that's an interesting question you brought up. I want to address some of these chats that people are saying. Maverick was addressing on the earlier topic about some of the stuff that I was talking about. Marvel says the art is still terrible. Black Cat miniseries art is god awful, and I want to say amen to that. What is that? Travel Foreman. That guy. I got introduced to him on a Zach video, and I forget what book it was, but Zach was like, "Oh yeah, it's Travel Foreman." I was like, "Oh, interesting." And then every book I've read with Travel Foreman, I'm just like, "Oh, this is hideous. Who is? Oh my God, is this Travel Foreman guy?" I thought this guy was supposed to be decent. Black Cat is terrible. Did a review of that on the channel earlier. And it's funny because that book sold like 200 and some thousand issues. Like it destroyed the top 10 when it came out that month. But it's one of those things of just Marvel putting out gimmicks rather than quality. He also says Chip Zdarsky's the only writer I'm willing to buy whatever he puts out. He's improved as a writer. And I say amen to that. Life's story is what got me back into comics, or at least with Marvel, to try out. I was like, I can't miss this. I really need to try this. And I've been enjoying it ever since. There's 5 issues out now. Everyone seems to have a different opinion on which is the best issue, which I think is a sign of a good story. And I think it's one of the only things Marvel's put out in the last 20 years that will be looked back on 20 years from now as like, what was the classic comics, of the 20 teens, and that will be one of the books.
Well, yeah, out of continuity or redoing continuity miniseries do tend to be remembered longer, I think. Because if you go back to like the 80s, Watchmen, Dark Knight, you look at recently, like I said, Curse of the White Knight, Spider-Man Life Story. I do kind of agree with you on that.
Yeah, so that got me to
great in continuity stuff, but it's because when you don't have to follow any rules and you know what you're doing, you can craft a hell of a story, and that's what Zdarsky has done.
Yeah, he very much is. And I'm doing reviews on Daredevil. Um, well, I've changed things around, but I'm covering Daredevil now to give people. I'm trying to give people a sense. I'm trying to advocate for this book. So maybe I'll win people over like you, Eric. You'll watch the video, and you'll be like, oh, I want to read this, and no one has to. I don't want anyone to ever feel like the fingers pointed at you and your shame if you're not reading this book. You should absolutely spend your money on what you want to spend your money on. But at the same time, I relate to comics from a level of enthusiasm, and I really want to see other people enthused about comics. And when I share my thoughts and opinions like this, it's because I want them to get the same joy that I am, not because I'm trying to judge them about what quality comics they do or don't read. It's because I want them to feel like, oh man, I want everyone to feel like what it was, like it used to be like, and everyone just loved comics. You came home, you read the books in the middle of the store while you're in line. You came home, you were flipping them open as soon as you got home. When I was young, we would hang out with my friends at their house. We'd just be talking about X-Men all day long, and it was great because I had my one buddy who was a big New Mutants X-Force guy. I had another buddy who was a big X-Factor guy, and I was the X-Men guy. And the stuff crossed over in the universe, but it was an interesting dynamic that each of us had a different favorite book. And I just miss that enthusiasm. And when I watch some of these videos, um, you know, uh, that some people do, and they're just really enthused. Like Gateway into Comics is a YouTuber I follow, and he just did a video about the new X-Men book. And I didn't quite agree with everything that he said, but I just loved hearing his excitement and just genuine like joy of reading these books. I get so down sometimes, like following YouTube videos and seeing Twitter and just people just being like, "Oh, it sucks. The industry sucks. These books suck." And it's like, we don't pay this money to not be happy. So I want to be an advocate for what's out there, even if there's valid reasons like what you just illustrated about why not to buy Marvel. I'm not going to tell people you're wrong. I was there for almost 2 years, of just like, I'm not buying Marvel. It's shit show. I don't want to give them my money. I just made a different choice because of what I explained about. I want to show feedback and saying, look, you're responding the right way. You're doing what we're asking. I'm going to support that because I want you to see as a publisher that the right decisions have positive effects. I want you to. That's because that's what ultimately, in the end of the day, what they answer, right, is the bottom line. If everyone buys Daredevil, which they're not, by the way, but if everyone did, then it'd be like, oh yay, But I want to talk about some more of these chats here because everyone's giving some good feedback, and I don't want it to drop. And I don't have super chats or anything, so I'm not giving anyone special attention. End of Thought says, "This is why I dig Eric. Hate readers are the garbage that keep Marvel afloat." Well, that's kind of true. He also says DC was good until Bendis. Maverick says, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm picking up more Marvel than DC. After Heroes in Crisis and Bendis on Superman, I'm not that interested anymore." And you're not alone, buddy. But let me tell you, DC has got some good stuff. Hawkman is fantastic. All the Black Label stuff so far has been solid to amazing. Curse of the White Knight, I did a review on that. Spoiler, it's utterly amazing. I did a review on Last Night on Earth. The first issue of Last Night on Earth is seriously one of the best comics I've ever read. I'd like to talk about more of that later. But DC is doing some fantastic stuff. Scott Snyder is quietly over in this corner doing Justice League and knocking it out of the park, and no one's really paying attention because it's Justice League. And I was that way, so I totally understand. Everyone's kind of focusing on the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and DC is crapping the bed on that, but don't let that completely dissuade you. They are doing, DC's kind of divided into two camps right now. One camp is Camp Shit Show, and the other camp is Snyder John's, probably two of the best creative visions in comics right now. So there's good stuff out there. Let's see what else. Michael Scumbody.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, you do. Go ahead.
But no, yeah. I want to take the Maranya one.
Oh, go for it.
Yes, Eglantine, he had to invoke the name, didn't he? And here he is now on his way to being a villain. And Venkman, never. There is no getting rid of me. As you are.
A lot of people are upset about this Hawkman villainy thing, and I'm not, because let's remember what Venditti, his origin that he did, that made the Hawkman 1 through 12 one of the best ongoing.
I think they're just, they're making everybody villains, and I think they're just afraid that, making him. And one of the worst things through the years is when a creator would get on a great run or a great role with a character, and then editorial would come in and go, well, yeah, we understand that you have this character doing this, but we've got this event, so, we need you to fit that in. And all of a sudden characters are doing things, like completely different from what they were doing the issue before. And I think that's what's got people upset. I think they'd rather that this event would have just left Hawkman alone, let Venditti do his thing, more so than, yes, he's been a villain before, and I trust Venditti. He'll make it as good as he can. But I think that's what's got some, readers salty.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's one of the downside of these events, is when the editorial comes in and says we're going to do all this stuff. But it's a give or take, right? Part of the buy-in to a big Ultimate Universe thing, no pun intended, is having these things that matter. And my personal is, I thought DC Metal was a solid event. Given the day, given the era that we are in comics, Metal was really good. It may not have been great compared to like the 90s but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It added a lot of mythos to the DC universe that was desperately needed. And I like that this new event, Year of the Villain, is a sequel to Metal. It means that Metal matters. It's not like War of the Realms, which is already just doesn't mean anything anymore. Like it's already over. Move on. These events. What's that?
To begin with, it didn't mean anything to begin with.
Well, true. I mean, it meant that you had to buy 79 comics to follow the whole story.
Well, you got a point there.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, there are some things that I can see you can grumble about this Year of the Villain, but I like the fact that so far it's just a thematic event. You're not having to follow this massive storyline. Each character, each comic was just sort of like, here's a villain, Luthor powers them up, write a story about it. And so you just get to follow your own characters. I think that's a cool thing. As far as turning heroes into villains, I'm really against that, as you know. But they're only doing six corrupted people from the whole universe. They're not doing every title. So I'm kind of okay with that as well. I'm okay because Hawkman comes from a place of villainy that I don't think you can even I think it's almost kind of silly to make Hawkman a villain, because you're just like, dude, he can't do worse than he already has done. It's like,
here's the plus at that. There are some people that will jump all the way into an event with both feet, and that banner going across a Hawkman might get it a couple thousand more sales, and some of those people might read and go, holy shit, what have I been missing? I should have been listening to that Ash fellow all this time. And it might jump from the miserable 18,000 a month to over 20, and then maybe it catches on from there. I mean, that it can't hurt.
Yeah.
So sometimes getting sucked into an event can be the best thing to happen to a book that deserves a much bigger audience.
Yeah.
And I agree with Melania again. Not every book needs to be part of the events. Including every book in an event is frankly a cash grab.
That's a very good comment. And not every book needs to be part of the event. I kind of excuse DC, at least for now, because it's like a thematic event. It's not like you have to go buy Hawkman to follow the Year of the Villain, right? It's it's just completely about the offer that Luthor makes to each of these people. And the whole point of this event is that Luthor is trying to bring about doom and destroy all the heroes. Not just some of the heroes, all of them. So he makes an offer to all the villains of every single hero. But if you don't care about what happens in Batgirl, or if you don't care what happens in The Flash or Hawkman or whatever books you're not interested in, it's not like there's a linear storyline you have to go and read that book to understand.
Nobody cares about what's going on in Batgirl now.
Right. My understanding is that there's just going to be like a 6-issue miniseries like there was in Metal, and then you'll get to see every character fight their villain. And that's another thing. These villains, they're already the villains for those characters, right? So seeing Batman, for instance, fight Mr. Freeze. Is it Dr. Freeze or Mr. Freeze?
Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Freeze. I get messed up.
He's not fighting the men's room. Is his villain in this?
Well, at least in Detective Comics. That's already like a Batman villain storyline, right? So if I didn't tell you it was you're the villain and Batman just went against Mr. Freeze, would you have a complaint? Or
no, not at all. I mean, I agree with your point. I mean, it's sort of like, it's sort of like they're putting this up there, and yeah, it might be a cash grab, but it can't hurt at this point because, unfortunately, DC has really hurt themselves with some of their, business and creative choices in the past year. If this might be a chance, like I said, get some people to buy some of these books that they wouldn't ordinarily buy, and they can realize, hey, Bendis might be doing some damage to Superman, and King might have turned Batman into whatever insult you're on pejorative here, but there's still a lot of good stuff coming from that company. I mean, I've eased my way back into a handful of titles after you convinced me to go back to Hawkman, and I said that the You're the Villain banner might actually help some titles, and so that's never a bad thing. I said, especially if you read them, like you people that got sucked into War of the Realms, they buy those titles and they go, man, this stuff is bad. But then you read some of that DC stuff, and you go, hey, this stuff's pretty good. So I think I'm gonna hang around on a few of these.
Back to the chats real quick.
I'm sorry, I gotta say something. Maverick, I've never had anybody use the sentence, I wish I had your optimism, Eric.
So, Tahilum says DC had You're the Villain before. They had Month of the Villain, which was similar, and it sounds real similar. And they did a legitimate
in the 90s.
Well, no, they just had it in 52.
No, this is the third time.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't know. But in New 52, somewhat recently, that's still fresh in fans' minds, they had the Month of the Villain. And that was kind of a BS thing. Like, I wasn't buying comics at that time, but I've had people educate me on what happened. And selling you on multiple copies of a single issue, like, oh, you got to buy Batman 23.1 and 23.2 and 23.3 and then 23.4 because he's got to have all these villains have these, like, that was bullshit. And I understand why people didn't like that, and that's part of the reason why New 52 was people didn't like. But I feel like this time DC's trying to almost say, hey, we're sorry we did that wrong, let's do it a good way. Fans are still burned, so I understand. I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong how you think. I'm just trying to give you a different perspective to say, hey, maybe I should have a little bit of optimism, or whatever. You do what you need to do. I just want to give both sides of the coin fair, exposure. And like I said, I'm about positivity. We have enough negativity in comics to just rant and rave. And believe me, I will rant and rave with the best of them. How much I hate what Bendis is destroying with Superman. The Superman lore is being completely pissed on. But
that's true, folks. I've heard him.
I don't want to just do that all the time. I buy comics because I love them genuinely. I don't hate buy comics. Maranya says DC has fewer books. Marvel has like twice the books. So including every book in an event and making them a crucial to the plot, that is a super cash grab. Amen. End of Thought says DC put out a bunch of annuals this week. All great stories. I read Green Lantern, Justice League Dark, and Red Hood, but it's too few now. I don't personally buy annuals. I think annuals are an outdated model. I think they are also cash grabs. What are your thoughts on annuals, Eric?
I love them. I always have. I've in my 45 years of doing this, my favorite kind of books are the oversized books, whether they're the 80-page giants, the dollar comics, the annuals, the super spectaculars, the summer specials, you name it. If it's if it's an odd size now, it's like when an annual was the end of a story arc. Now, of course, I'm talking back when an annual was 50 cents and the regular comics were 5 or 30, a little easier on the wallet. I love this because it gave like a double issue to, bang out the rest of the story. And I've always been a huge fan. Now, I will get annuals have lost their luster, especially when Marvel publishes an annual after 4 issues of a title that they're going to cancel after issue 7. So, but at least at DC, they do kind of wait till almost a year and actually do them on a annual basis. Because I'm not sure Marvel even knows what that word means.
Doo doo. I think Marvel does know what doo doo means.
I mean, I read the Green Lantern annual, and it was a nice little self-contained story. So I mean, you don't need to read it and it was set on Earth. It knock it off, bats. It doesn't Green Lantern's been in space for so long. It was just neat to kind of see him on Earth for one story. And I heard good things about the Red Hood and Red Hood annual because they brought back Bizarro and Artemis. So that sometimes they're worth reading. Like the Batman annual was probably the last great story Tom King's written. From weeks ago.
My thing on annuals comes from when I was big into comics, mid 80s, mid 90s. At that particular time, annuals were sort of like a special thing. It was like once a year, they released this annual, and it would be this big double, triple size story sometimes. And then they would always put on like a quality presentation, at least with X-Men, right? X-Men book the annual would come out and it'd be like Art Adams doing the art, and Art Adams is my favorite artist of all time, comic book artist, but he is super slow. He is also makes tons of money just doing covers, so he hardly ever draws an actual comic. But back then, he would do the annuals. You'd see Silvestri drawing the normal comic month after month, and then we'd get some special story, also written by Chris Claremont. Art Adams doing the art. It was like a special thing. You were like, ooh, the annuals, and you got to collect them. Nowadays, I feel the annuals are just sort of this bygone product, and it was like, that's what we do. Every comic needs to have this annual. We're gonna upcharge you and charge, And I look and they put some guest artist on who's just maybe he's an up and comer, or he's just not that good. They put some guest writer on. The stories don't make any sense as far as like the continuity. It's just some random story, which is just mediocre. And I'm like, I don't want to pay extra money for a mediocre book. I care about the ongoing saga of this character. And then the other thing they address sometimes is they say, okay, like the last annual I bought, I think was like the last Flash annual, which did tie in to the main story arc. And I was like, this should have just been a normal issue. It shouldn't be an annual because now it falls out of the numbering sequence. And I was like, that's not the way to use annuals either. So that's just my thoughts. I didn't want to sidetrack too long on those, but I just don't buy annuals.
A couple things. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me, or is Pat's just being his usual charming self? And what happened to the standards in this live stream? Who let the Hut in?
The comic book Hut. Oh, hey, comic book Hut.
There's my Tommy Lasorda print.
Well, you were always quiet, right? That was the problem we had, the audio. I tried to turn my audio down so that people could turn their volume up and be equalized. I didn't want to mess with it any further because the show started so late. So, again, everyone, I apologize if Eric is low and I'm loud. I can turn myself down more. if need be. I can't turn Eric up any higher, so that's where we're at. Um, let's see.
Well,
Yo,
I don't know if it's that or if it's just bats trolling.
oh, could be Bats trolling. Uh, Comic Book Cut says, "Yo, Eric, now it's my turn to kill your live stream." Okay, I don't know what that's all about.
I used to go on his, and every time I would go on, he would start buffering.
Huh?
It was a gift.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Is there anything important to be said? Marania says Avengers and Iron Man annuals back in the day were awesome and the price was decent. Yeah, basically kind of echoing what I was saying. Um, and the thought says
That's
I
when
can't.
I was. Go ahead.
He says I can't believe this contradictory thing I hear. I almost nonstop hear people complain that they don't get enough self-contained single stories. If it is in an annual, I don't see the difference. Well, I thought you may not have listened to me long enough yet, but I am not a big single stories guy. I'm one of the few defenders of the writing for the trade that people tend to use all the time as a complaint. Um, but then my comic fandom comes from old school X-Men, and Chris Claremont is the original long school, long form writer. I mean, he would write epics that would take literally years to unfold in the comic books. Um, so I like that. I like month after month just seeing this long sagas unfold. I was never a big fan of just open a book, get a little story, close it, and the end. I don't criticize that by any means. I respect that form. In fact, I just did my Batman 1000, or sorry, Detective Comics 1008 review. It's in the can. I haven't posted it yet. So shout out to Michael Spengatti, I think his name is. He was in the chat, and I didn't have a chance to shout out to him. He was asking me some questions about Batman. If you're still in the chat, buddy, I did the review. It's in the can. Stay posted. And that was the Joker story. It's a single one-shot. Did you read it by chance, Eric?
Yeah. I liked it a lot. When I first read it, I wasn't sure about it because then I thought, I said, for what it's supposed to be, it's a nice change of pace, and I kind of changed my opinion after I read it and gave it some thought, which I guess makes it a good comic when it makes you think about it after you read it instead of just instantly forget about it.
Right. Yeah. I actually ended up reading it almost 3 times, which I explained in my review. But it's a fun story and was a good use of the Joker. It kind of brought back what I feel is like 80s Joker. He's just more of the goofball kind of clown Joker, not the dark, sadistic, murdering thing that he's become in more modern times. But he kind of still fits. It's not like a radical departure of anything. And it was a fun little story about his interactions with Batman. You got to see some ludicrous moments like Joker and Batman riding on a Ferris wheel together and stuff. That
Michael is still here, and I want to comment on what he said. The Joker's lost his luster, in my opinion, and I agree. He's overused, but for that one story, if you just forget the fact that he's a member of the Legion of Doom and hanging out with people that he has no business hanging out with, that's the Joker in Detective 1008. Oh, and he just brought up Detective 475 and 476. Part of the Englehart Rogers run that I'm always touting. That's probably the greatest 2-issue Joker story I've ever read. But Detective 1008 was a nice little change of pace, and that's I like to see more Joker stories that are where I didn't get the feeling that he was hell, depending on who was writing, Joker's almost like a Galactus level villain, and he shouldn't be anything more than an insane clown that goes around, causing mayhem, killing a few people, and getting, shut up, Hut, and just cause some mayhem, kill a few people, get stopped, get put away till he breaks out again. Sometimes that's not a bad thing.
No, I agree, and that book I think shows it quite well. My takeaway, and I'm going to sit here and like hurt my views here. My takeaway of that particular book though was that while I enjoyed it and it got some laughs and it put a smile on my face, I don't want, if the comics was that way every single issue, I don't think I would collect it. You know, that's just me though. I'm not trying to say that that's a bad way to do comics, because there's a lot of fans who do want their comics to be that way, and I respect it. I just prefer the long soap opera type drama and things unfolding over a long period of time that you can follow month after month after month. That's just the way I am. I'm that way with TV too. I rarely ever watch, like, I don't watch that much TV now, but when I was even more on TV, I would hate all those like cop dramas that became real popular in the 2000s, where it was like every show was a copy of CSI somehow. The procedural, they called them, what do they call them? The police procedurals. They didn't matter. It was just every episode, it was like a self-contained little story, and I don't like that. I like the episodic, the Game of Thrones type thing, if you will, where you watch it from day one, episode one, and you watch this massive long story unfold. That's just my taste. So that's
I'm way more a fan of that on television, like than the self-contained procedurals.
Tehillim says, you forgot at Eric Breen Joker left the Legion of Doom on the Snyder Tinian run. I was going to mention that. Joker's no longer part of the Legion of Doom.
I said I did not know that, and I thanked him.
Oh, I didn't. I'm senile. Dini's 6-issue single story run of Detective from around 10 to 12 years ago was awesome, and the Joker was perfect. Well, Paul Dini is one of the probably the great Batman minds. There's a few writers out there that really understand the character. I think that most fans will kind of agree, like, these guys get it and these other guys were just kind of posers. I think Dini is one of those people that if he's writing Batman, you can trust that Dini's going to reflect the character accurately and appropriately. Let's see. Tomasi writes some great stories, says to heal him. I agree. So let's. Michael asks Ash and Eric top 5 Joker issues. I am not a DC fan long enough to really answer that question. Do you have that answer?
I saw 3 of them. I said, yeah, the Batman or the Detective 475 and 476 is my favorite. The Batman 321, from I remember, very good. There was a single story, I think it was in Batman 251. It was O'Neill and Adams, that I don't remember all the particulars, but it ended with Joker trying to steal his car and get away, and Batman catches up to him, beats the hell out of him, throws him in the passenger seat to go take him back to Arkham, and he goes, why didn't the car start? And Batman goes, you got to know how to start it. And it was one of those push button things where the password was Batman, and the Joker's just like, "Doh," at the end. It was just a great little one-off. And God, I know there have been, so many other great stories through the years that, I can't, none of them just, pop right into my head. But I mean, there have been a lot of great Joker stories. I mean, he's a tremendous character, but there have also been a lot of really bad ones.
Of course. And that's one of the things that you have to kind of, I believe, you have to kind of accept about comics. If you get into comics, like long term, not just I'm going to dabble with comics a couple years and then dip out. If you get into comics for like ongoing series, you have to just understand they're not going to hit home runs every time. You're going to have dips and valleys. And sometimes you're just going to be like, oh, this is kind of dragging. And that's just the way it goes. I think maybe I've just been around comics long enough to like, I kind of accept that. I see a lot of newer readers and stuff just, oh, it was really good, and then it turned bad, I'm out. Like, and that's fair enough. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just trying to set the expectations out there. You're going to get a lot of boring stuff. Even in the 90s, which I say is like the great mecca renaissance of comics, the mid 80s to mid 90s, there was a lot of just blah stuff too. The difference is 50% of what the publishers made was gold, rather than today where it's like 2 to 5% of what the publishers make is gold. So, you know what? Eric, you had mentioned a while back. Speaking of Joker, just kind of got me on this. You had mentioned a while back that you wanted to talk to me about um, the last night on Earth. You had commented on my video and said, I have this, I'm got ideas of where I think this is going. We should talk about it. And I responded, yeah, we should. And then like time went on, and we never did. And now that we're talking about the Joker, I just wanted to say I really love how the Joker's used in that particular story. So this is kind of a segue. What are your thoughts on Last Night on Earth?
I like it a lot. Here's the thing, it's 3 issues. I just finished the second one, and I honestly don't know where it's going. I mean, because I've got a theory that at some point in issue 3, we're going to find out that this is all in his head.
Oh,
And
I would
that,
be very disappointed if that.
Well, if it isn't, then how do you explain a severed Joker head that's sentient? I was thinking at some point like that this somebody's behind this, and they basically created almost like a Westworld type thing, as part of whatever their machinations, how do you pronounce that, and that he will figure it out at the end of the story, and that it's not he didn't bring about the end of the world. This all, I don't mean like not wasn't a recent Tomasi run all in his head, or
Yes, that was the
okay,
the beginning arc of Tomasi, right before leading up to Detective Comics 1000. It wasn't all in
thank
his
you, Hud.
head. It was kind of like his own private matrix that he entered in to train himself. So I guess yes, it is in his head, but
I don't know. I think my prediction is it's going to be something like that. You know, I'd be curious, like, how you think it's going to end.
okay. Well, I haven't read issue 2 yet. I just picked it up. Books like that, for anyone's listening, I try to really savor. So I already read White Knight, which by the way is freaking phenomenal. I was gonna read Last Night on Earth tonight, and maybe I will later, but got the streaming instead. Um,
Hello,
I,
Melissa.
I would. Let's see. Melissa says, "Oh, Ash, I stopped by to say hello really quick. I'm going to sleep early tonight because last night me and my autistic son Jake were up late at Walmart paying our rent and bills." Well, thank you for stopping by, Melissa. It's always good to see you, and appreciate it. And tell your son I said hello, and have yourself a good evening. So Last Night on Earth, if it is a sort of like all in his head or a dream or thing, I would be very disappointed, mostly because Tom King did that story, then Tomasi did that story, and now we're getting this big epic miniseries that's been hyped up, and it's so far really good. And if that was the resolution, we'd just be like, oh, really? And the other reason I think I would be dismayed, because one of the reasons I like Scott Snyder is not because he's a fantastic writer per se. I think he's a good writer, but he's not the way of kind of writer that I look at, like Frank Miller, who just knows how to put words and make art on a page with words. But Scott Snyder's an idea man. He's kind of DC's equivalent of Donny Cates. He's the kind of guy that just thinks of things that no one else thinks of, right? I mean, he's the one that gave us Metal. You're like, what? There's a dark multiverse of crazy, heavy metal villains. Like, it worked. Like on the surface, you're like, that's bizarre, weird. When you look at, that works. The whole World Forge and the dark multiverse is being recycled, and the corruption. What's that word? I always forget that word. That basically means like decay and anyways. I loved the mythos that was added there. I loved how he tore down the source wall. I love how he added more to the cosmic. He's doing all these things. Donny Cates doing a similar thing over at Marvel, and we need a lot of that. We need those idea guys like Jack Kirby, right? That just were like, I'm gonna invent a whole new world of comics, and you're just like, wow. Then there are some writers that can just write really well, like your Chip Zdarsky, that just They understand dialogue and prose and emotion and things. They're not necessarily big idea persons. They're not bringing tons of new things you've never seen before. They're just solid execution. So if that turned out to be the case, I'd be kind of disappointed because it's not what I love about Snyder. I love that he gives us new things that are just, wow, I've never seen this before. And my thought is that what we're seeing, the reason why Joker's severed head and everything is because it's so far in the future. Like I feel, well, I guess it's hard to say because some of these characters are alive, so that it kind of destroys my theory. But I was like, what if this is hundreds of years in the future?
But they're saying that, Batman recreated himself once a generation. Are they also going to say that they did the same thing with the Joker, and that, head in the future, that you can survive without your body in the future? Is that what you were going with that, or
something like that? I mean, I hadn't really thought this out too much, but maybe it makes sense that some sort of technology has preserved his head, so that he can stay alive. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't really drilled down. I know I'm like you. I don't know where this is going. I just, you could very much be right. This could just be all some sort of illusion or a dream or something. I mean, part of me did kind of go there with the whole reincarnation of Batman. Or not, sorry, it's like a clone. What if this is all the teaching process of the clone? Because you know how they have to like make the clone and it takes like 2 years to gestate, and so it can, before it can become alive and wake up, as you will. So I imagine the programming of the clone to give them all the memories of Batman and do all these things to make him the new Batman, like, is probably done in the form of dreams or things like that. So what if this is all that experience of this clone, learning to be Batman, and it's all done through like a weird dreamlike state?
That was I didn't think of that. That's an interesting idea. I trust Snyder. Whatever he does do, he's going to do it well. That much I think we can agree on, regardless of how it ends.
Yes. All right. So enough about that particular book. A couple more chats. Most says, before I go back to sleep, Joker movie will fail. Joker has no origin. I think the Joker movie is going to fail because Joker without Batman doesn't make sense. As far as having an origin, I don't think that's a deal breaker because Sean Gordon Murphy gave Joker an origin in White Knight, and it works. Like, I don't think mainstream continuity Joker should ever have his origin told, but in the Murphyverse, it works. What do you think about that, Breen? Joker having an origin. Breen, did we lose you? We lost Breen. All right, well, we'll just carry on until I can figure out what the heck's going on with our favorite Boomer. Maybe he had an emergency. Let's see. Maverick says it could also be Psycho Pirate. That is true. It could be Psycho Pirate, but wouldn't that be a little disappointing if it's also Psycho Pirate's doing what's going on in the Tom King books? Like, I really hope that Snyder's not going to do something like that. Ronnie, I'm starting to like DCeased now that it's focusing on the blood transmission of the zombie virus and not the too on the nose, haha, people are addicted to social media. Let's make them real zombies. I've only read the first issue of DCeased, and I was surprised at how decent it was. There were 2 really great moments of suspense that I have not felt in comics since I've been back in comics, and I had to be like, I got to give the writer credit to have suspense like that white knuckle, edge of your seat. Oh my God, what's going to happen? It's hard to do in still form art, but I did. He had me going, and exactly what that book should be. And it is astounding to me how different, night and day, DC Tom Taylor is versus Marvel Tom Taylor. Marvel Tom Taylor is out there writing the cringiest left-wing propaganda in his books. The new Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man book is just like, oh my God, where Peter comes in and sees someone wearing his underwear. Like, I was just like, what is going on in this book? But then you go over in DC and you get things like Injustice, which is a really well-received storyline. You get Deceased, which apparently everyone's liking, and it's just, I don't know what the difference is. So I'm glad people are liking it. I'm glad Tom can actually earn a paycheck. I wish I knew why it's so radically different. Michael Scambati, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Ash and Eric, what comics do you think Sam Hamm and Tim Burton looked at to write Batman 89 and Batman Returns 92? I know the answer to that. None. Tim Burton is famous for proclaiming about Batman that he has never and would never read a comic book, which explains why those movies were as bad as they were. I know a lot of people like them, and I know why. I was one of those people, but in hindsight, you look back and go, this isn't Batman. So I don't know if the stream is still going. I haven't seen any comments lately.
Well,
Eric, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
What happened?
I went and grabbed a Coke.
Oh, all right. I threw a bone over to you and you didn't respond. I was like, what's going on?
Well, I said I'll be right back.
I think we lost the stream.
Yeah, if there's anybody still out there, somebody throw up a comment.
Yeah, I think it's dead.
Wonder what caused that.
Wait. Maybe it says live. Well, it had 2 people on the in there. Let's see. I'm gonna turn my volume up real quick here. Maybe it says live. Well, it had 2 people. All right. So it's working. It's broadcasting. I don't know where everyone went. They probably got booted. There we go. Michael's back.
Okay, we're good.
Susie and the Banshees Face to Face is my quintessential Batman and Catwoman romance song. I answered your question, Mike, about the Batman 89. I don't know if anyone heard it, so it's either lost in the nether or you heard my answer. Marania says, actually, I disagree. Batman in those Burton movies are more like the Neil Adams era Batman than the trash fire. Oh man, Marania just hurt my heart, Eric.
I don't know what to say, Ash.
My heart. You broke my heart. You broke my heart. I love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
What Marania said, I think it actually had the kind of the color scheme of the Adam West show mixed with the Gotham City that kind of was presented in the very early Batman and Detective comics, with the writing era of O'Neill and Adams. Whether that all came together by accident, I don't know. But for what those were, like I said, I mean, to me, all the Batmans we've seen are just different ways of presenting the character. All of them have their strengths, and for me, I said that the first 2, Keaton's acting and the atmosphere, made those movies, enjoyable for me.
For sure. And when you consider what comic book movies were before Batman 89, look up the Fantastic Four movie or the Captain America movie before 89, and it was just atrocious. I mean,
it's honestly, to that point, the only comic book movies I count in my mental canon were the first 3 Supermans.
Yeah. So Batman 89 was like a wondrous achievement. And I was right there. I was I was all super excited. You know, I was a big Batman fan. You know, I liked Batman before, but I was, they did so many things right. The set design, you know, like I said, Michael Keaton's acting, they did a lot of things, I think, in spite of Tim Burton, you know, because the movie's not made just by one person. There's probably lots of people involved in the movie that were massive Batman fans and brought, you know, their talent and their love of the IP. I think Burton is just not a good filmmaker, and I could tell, you know, like, especially in hindsight, you go back and look at this movie, he's not a person that respected the Batman mythos. That movie kind of was made in spite of his vision, which is also why I believe Batman Returns went further off the rails. You know, unlike a similar scenario that happened with X-Men and Bryan Singer, who had never read an X-Men comic, he makes his X-Men movie. Then he goes and reads X-Men comics afterwards, and he makes X-Men 2, which is far superior movie. You're like, okay, like, it gets better. Batman got worse.
Oh, but I just saw some. Well, first, are you going to let Tehillim's comment go?
Let's
He says
see.
he's joking, but I don't think he is.
That Bendis is my favorite superhero.
No, yeah. Now the comment that I just noticed. Also in 1983, Tom Mankiewicz read a script featuring Silver St. Cloud, Rupert Thorne, and the Joker and Penguin. Again, that would have been taken heavily from the Englehart Rogers run, and I would have loved to have seen that.
I think in 1983, whatever Batman movie you would have got would have just been a dumpster fire. We want to see that on the screen, but back then, the way superhero movies were treated, that would have just been, it would
Well,
have
I
been
didn't say I wanted to see 1983, but I'm saying if somebody wanted to do that now and just
right.
a movie based on that run would be I could retire from superhero movies if I got that. I'd be good.
Yeah. What is your favorite superhero movie?
Wow, that's I would say just for mm,
That's a tough question, isn't it?
uh
You
Captain America: The First Avenger, I think.
you guys in chat, tell us what your favorite superhero movie is. I'd like to see what other people are thinking on this. I'm not really sure. Like, I really love The Dark Knight. Is one of my absolute favorites. Um, Spider-Man 2 is amazing. I don't know if it counts, but it is a superhero movie. But I was thinking more about based on comics. The first Incredibles movie it aged so well. That is such a brilliant superhero movie. And Kevin Feige, if you're listening to the stream, that's how you do a Fantastic Four movie. So you can thank me. Just gonna check my way.
He just texted me. He's not watching.
Oh, okay. Let's see. End of thoughts. Favorite movie, comic book movie, hero movie is Blade. He says, not joking. Well, back in the day, I gotta say for sure, Blade was like one of the superior movies. You're just like, damn, how come they can make cool Marvel? Like, they can make cool. Blade was one of those characters. It's like a reject character, like no one cared about, and then they make this kick-ass movie with him, and you're just like, why can't you make a Spider-Man movie like this? Why can't you make any other Marvel character? You make Blade, and you do this. That's funny. Tehillim, animated or live is fine. Just if it's a movie and it's superheroes. You know, like I said, Incredibles, I guess counts. It's Fantastic Four. Come on. What movie did you say again, Eric?
Captain America: The First Avenger.
The director of that movie was the director of one of my favorite movies too. That gets kind of lost in the memory hole. The Rocketeer. Do you remember that movie?
Oh yeah. I say, Margot Martindale. I'm sorry, character actress Margot Martindale was in that.
That's a weird piece of trivia. Joe Johnston, I believe, is the director. I had a lot of high hopes for Captain America: First Avenger, and I walked away liking it, but not as much as I was really expecting to. And I think maybe that's just because I love the Rocketeer so much, and I was expecting like, oh, Captain America, you know. Winter Soldier is my favorite Captain America film.
Well, some, I guess with the first one, just, I thought they did a really good job of telling the story. Tommy Lee Jones, always a plus.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, I mean, there are obviously superhero movies that have had better superhero action. I mean, it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to not just say the first Avengers movie, because that was something that I never thought we would see. Something on that scale.
You nailed something right there. I think that's super important. That I thought, I was like, they're never gonna be able to do Captain America right. It's a dude running around with a shield, and he's wearing a Star Spangled outfit. Like in the comics, okay, but it's just gonna be weird. Like audiences are not gonna get it. It's gonna come across silly when you do it like live action. It's like I was like and then they did it, and I was like, bravo, bravo. The accomplishment of pulling that off was astounding. Let's see. Marania says, for the core character in terms of representation, Batman 89, Superman 1, great movie, Superman 1, and Captain America First Avenger, and Iron Man #1, of course. How can we forget Iron Man #1? It's so, first and maybe one of the best Marvel movies.
How can we forget Iron Man 3? Guess who's in the corner?
Why did you have to remind me of Trevor?
That wasn't for you.
Oh. Michael Skimbody says his favorite superhero movies are Batman 89 and Batman Returns and The Punisher Warzone. That's one I need to see, is Punisher Warzone.
Oh, McNulty is Jigsaw. Can't beat it.
I noped out after the previous Punisher. I was like, just failure after failure of Punisher movies. I was like, I'm done. But everyone tells me, oh no, you gotta see Warzone. It's different. And I was like, all right.
This movie is just like, the movie starts as if you were in the middle of a issue of Punisher. Yes, Ray Stevenson. He gives no F's. It's just, it's basically Punisher versus Jigsaw. And like I said, God, what the hell is the guy's name? Guy played McNulty on The Wire. I can't believe I can't think of his name. He was great. Tell Quarks he's not allowed to leave.
He's got video games to play.
That's probably true. I mean, it's
can't be playing video games and listening to the stream at the same time.
I mean, I say we'd be there for him, but I understand.
I know. What are you gonna do, kids these days? See you later, Quirks. Thanks for swinging by and hanging out with us.
Thanks for giving us a little of your attention, Quirks. We appreciate it.
Tehillim says, for Marvel movie, I actually didn't mind the Fantastic Four in 2005. That is utter blasphemy, and you need to take that statement back, Tehillim.
No, he doesn't.
Oh. Wait a second. Is that the third Fantastic Four movie?
No, the first one of the two that were made.
The first one with
Lightning. The first one of the two with Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis and
with Lightning Doctor Doom.
That was
the Fantastic Five. Wow. Well, I guess I'm not going to be supported here. I think Fantastic Four, both that one and the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, are some of the worst comic movies I've ever seen. I hate those movies. Wow. I didn't see the third one with Black Johnny Storm.
Michael, I did not know that. I thank you for the heads up. I'm going to have to check that out.
End of thought says Fantastic Four movie in 2005 was good. Jessica Alba was nice.
Yes.
I have a little crush on Jessica Alba, but that movie was barf. I do the barf emoji. I hate those movies. I have not seen that third film. Some people like that third one. That's why I was wondering.
Here's the thing about Fan Four Stick. It was a good movie. It was not a Fantastic Four.
Well,
If that
either
was
was the
just
first one. Doctor Doom didn't
nah,
go out into space and get elemental powers like the
no,
Fantastic Four.
I understand that, but I mean, like I said, I don't hold comic book movies to the comic book canon. But like I said, Fantastic Four, the last one. I said it's. I mean, and I'm not saying. I mean, I said it was a good movie. That's about as good as I can say for it. But as a Fantastic Four movie, I'll take the Roger Corman one over that one.
Yeah, I don't think they've done. I think The Incredibles is the only Fantastic Four movie.
Well, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. Tell you you're wrong. I said you're
You
not the
tell me
first
I'm wrong
person
all the
that said
time.
that. I know. I'm just not gonna tell you you're wrong in this particular instance. Take the win.
Well, we can move on. I don't want to. I don't want to a movie that I'm clearly outnumbered on. People like them film. So obviously, I will. I will aside, or why do you say acquiesce? That's how you say.
Yeah. You'll see the point. You'll acquiesce. Any one of those will work.
End of thought says, I saw the third Fantastic Four movie with Black Johnny Storm because it was my duty, or is my duty, to do what I'm told, and supporting social justice and justified hatred is the righteousness these movies teach us.
End of thought. You get a bike lock. And you get a bike lock. Everybody gets a bike lock.
Oh, all right. Speaking of bike locks, Powers of X came out this week. And every week we're going to be getting a new Marvel gimmick book because Marvel can't release comics monthly. They need to overload their consumers and fans with what they call a shotgun approach. Because Marvel makes so many books and they can't afford to cut their line in half, which is what they should. They should cut their line by 3/4 or more. But the problem is no matter what, that wouldn't translate to more sales of the other books. So they know there's fans out there going to be buying these other books, so they keep publishing over and over these new number ones to keep fans buying the Marvel books and not exploring all these other better books that are out there, because you can't afford to, because you keep buying these Marvel books. And one of these books, the new scheme is House of X and Powers of X, a $5.99 book, a ridiculous price tag. I did reviews on both of these. I released my review of Powers of X, or Powers of 10, sorry, today. Now, these aren't terrible books, and I have decided to try them out. Not out of optimism, but out of hope, because I love X-Men. I really do. I understand the fans that want a good X-Men book. I relate as well as anyone. The first one was really dry. It didn't give us any characters to care about. I'm kind of forgiving about it because I know this is all just prelude. This is all prologue. This isn't the actual. This is all Hickman saying, I'm going to set up this thing so that when I launch X-Men #1, I have a universe already formed and everyone knows what to do. Which is going to be really weird for all the people that didn't follow the House of X and they just buy X-Men #1 and all of this, essentially school time we have to go with these 12 issues of House of X to learn all the lore and everything that's going on. And people jump on the X-Men series and be like, I'm lost. It's like, well, go invest in all these books. Anyways, Powers of X came out. I did my review. Probably a lot of people haven't seen it, but it's better. It's a step up. There were things about it that were good, that like actually characters to care about. Unfortunately, none of those characters were X-Men, but they were sort of characters of the future and things like that. And some of my favorite X-Men stories of the past have been stories such as that, such as like when Mother Ascani came back to take infected Nathan little baby Nathan away into the future that we all knew as fans later would come back as Cable. That was cool, a way of connecting things and creating this mythos that Scott Lobdell would actually explore later in The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, which, by the way, if you have never read that miniseries, it is a fantastic story. It takes place 3,000 years, or in the year 3000. It's the age of Apocalypse. Apocalypse rules the world, and it's this great story. And anyways, I'm not gonna go into that. You haven't read Powers of X, and you're not really interested. Or were you ever an X-Men fan, Breen, or is that was something that was just out of your wheelhouse?
Oh, a huge X-Men fan, but so when I started when I started reading X-Men, Dave Cockrum was still the artist.
Wow.
And so I was there at the beginning of the Claremont Byrne run. I was through all of that, read. Yeah, I mean, I basically read continuously up until about 2011. So I've read every incarnation. I mean, I've read all the X-Forces, New Mutants, you name it. The miniseries you talked about, I've read that. I mean, I've read them all.
Now you read them, but were you in like? Did you read them just because you were a big comics guy, or did you read them because you were a big X-Men guy?
No, I mean, I was a big, comic book fan, and I liked the X-Men, but to be honest, I'm more of a fan of the X-Men from, like, say, 76 through about the late 80s into the early 90s, when X-Men got its first spin-off book, New Mutants, and then 4 years later, X Factor, and it was those three, and you still could name 80% of the X-Men without needing the second sheet of paper. It was easier to follow, and I thought, most of the great stories were told at that time. Not to say that there haven't been, really good stories after that, but there's got to be so many of them. And now they've been through so many incarnations. I mean, Magneto's had more heel turns than the Big Show. And after a while, it just kind of loses its effectiveness. Now, that might be just because I've been reading them too long. And I mean, I watched both of your videos, on the 2X books and a handful of others, and I've got a pretty good idea of what happens in the books. And just myself personally, I'm not seeing a whole lot to compel me to want to jump on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's understandable. I think the books right now aren't giving much to go on, especially for new people. I think if you didn't know much about X-Men at all, like you just kind of, I know about them. I know who Wolverine is and Professor X, but if you never read X-Men, you just kind of knew about them on the periphery. I think you jump on these books, and I don't think you're interested at all. There's like really nothing. I think what's intriguing me, what's getting me interested, is my desire to want to see X-Men again and to see this world sort of unfold. And I'm kind of excited because maybe there's potential. Maybe there's really something here. It's kind of like when you're a kid at Christmas and you're like starting to open your present, and it's like, I think I know what this might be. This could be cool. But you still haven't actually seen it, so you could be set up for a world of failure. It could be a big box of socks, right? But you hope it's some, and so you're like excited. That's kind of where I'm at right now, as Hickman's kind of unveiling some of this lore that he has got set up. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. I like the future thing, and the end reveal of this issue with the sort of the Garden of Eden scene, I thought was just it just sent all these ideas into my mind as I read it. I was just like, whoa. Sort of like Batman Last Night on Earth, where I don't know where it's going, but I got a couple of ideas and maybe where it could go, and I'm just hooked. I got to see where this goes. What does this mean? Does it mean anything? I'm hoping it does. I hope it means something. But to tell a story like this and maybe flip things on its head, that maybe I love when I read a story and what you think you're seeing is not actually what is happening, right? Like it looks like maybe the story is set in the future, but maybe that's actually the past, or something on that lines where you're just like, and it's not necessarily that it's a lie, you just perceived it wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, do you mind if I say something real quick?
Oh yeah, go.
I want to respond to Michael's last comment because it would take too long to type. Michael, if you had been watching the Comics Aficionados 3 weeks ago, the Batman edition that Wes was kind enough to allow me to guest star on, um, Denny O'Neil and Steve Englehart are my two favorites, even though Englehart only wrote very few Batman stories. In fact, I don't know what all he wrote at the time other than that, because I know he was at DC for a year. He agreed to come over to fix the Justice League if they would let him do a Batman arc, if I'm remembering correctly. I know he's written some stuff after that, but I said, so he wrote my all-time favorite. And Denny O'Neil kind of bridged the gap between, people perceiving Batman as the Adam West character and kind of made it possible for people to write him as an adult again. And that kind of led to like stuff in the tail end of the 70s into the 80s when Conway and Mensch were writing it, which I thought was one of the greatest periods of Batman stories. I don't know if those happened without Denny O'Neil or the Englehart run, which I'm sure influenced them, because they were still using parts of that story 5-6 years later with Hugo Strange, Boss Thorne, etc. So I would say this, as far as Len Wein, I'm not sure what all he wrote with Batman. If you'd be kind enough to throw that up in the chat, I'll see if any of those match. There might be some things that he wrote that I didn't realize were him. Yeah, thanks for letting me cut in, Ash.
You're part of the show too, buddy. Um, completely derailed off my Powers of X now. I don't even know what to talk about. I don't know if anyone else has read Powers of X's or House of X. If you have, you guys type in the comments to kind of address what you guys feel and what you think. I gave it an okay review. The book's okay. Like it has the potential to go somewhere really cool. It's kind of like when you crack open a novel and you get through the first couple chapters, you're like, it's all right. By the time you're done, it could be a really great book, or it could just be a total crap fest and you wasted your time. I don't know yet. I feel like the art is really good. There's some interesting dynamics and ideas being put forth. It feels a little dry is my biggest complaint. Like I want more humanity in my books.
Humanity first.
Humanity first. You know what I'm saying? Like just people being people.
Well, let me ask you, are you looking forward to the next issues?
Sorta.
That's the start, though. I mean, I said that's how you win people back after mustard and bigotry, after a character that can change countries' financial records to fight the gender pay gap and blah blah blah. So he's making you, at least Hickman's making you, think about going forward, and that's, like I said, that's a good start.
Yes, and to be truthful, I said this somewhere on Twitter. I forget where I made this argument, but I was like, you know what? I'm ready for the X-Men to just be reinvented. I had my era. I had 17 years of Chris Claremont. That's never coming back. It's the same thing I tell Star Wars fans. I'm like, look, Lucas is done. You're never getting Lucas back. It's now Disney Star Wars. It will never, ever be the same. Ever. Like you have to reconcile this in your mind. Now you can choose to try to accept this and enjoy what you can out of it as a fan, or if that's a deal breaker, fair enough. But please reconcile. And that's what I've done with X-Men. I'm like, you know what? I'm never getting Claremont back. And even if I did get Claremont back, it wouldn't be the same. I don't think Claremont could do with X-Men today what he did in the past. It's a different era. Too much has been done to the mythos and the characters and everything. It's a shit show. It's been a shit show for too long. So
No, that's fair.
My thinking is there are great idea men out there, right? And this what kind of brought me into was Donny Cates over at Marvel. I never liked Venom. I thought, that's not true. I love Venom. I think Venom is Spider-Man's greatest villain. It's at least my favorite Spider-Man villain. I didn't like Venom when they gave him his own series. I thought they ruined the character. For all these years, I've been sort of just prejudiced. Well, Venom, boo-hoo, and then Donny Cates is getting him, and everyone's raving about how it is, and I was like, okay, I believe you, but Marvel's a shit show, and I was like you, Eric. I was like, I'm not going to buy Marvel Comics. Well, I've since dropped that barrier, and now I am getting Venom, and holy crap, what Donnie's doing with this character, he's reinvented the character. It's still true enough to the original to where if you were a fan, it's kind of like what Venditti did with Hawkman. I mean, it's brought something new to the table that was more than he was before, that is allowing me, I want X-Men to do the same. I think I think X-Men can do the same. I think if a visionary writer can come on and say, what are the core aspects of X-Men? Okay, there's mutants, and they have these powers, and the rest of the world hates and fears them because of these powers, and there's Professor Xavier's this visionary who thinks he can get people to all get along, and they're going to help people anyway, even though they're feared. They still want to, do good in society. And then there's Magneto, who's the antithesis of Xavier, who's like, your way is not going to work, Charles. We have to, be militant. If we don't fight, we'll be killed. And that's you take that idea and now pretend X-Men didn't have 60 years of history. And what can you do with that? Create a vision. I'm kind of okay with that. I may not like it. It may not hit with me, but I think you can't keep chasing the past, right? It's been failure after failure after failure of writers who just aren't Chris Claremont. They don't have his vision. No one is ever going to have his vision, just like Lucas. No one's ever going to have Lucas's vision of Star Wars. X-Men is X-Men because of Claremont. Claremont radically changed that title. He did not keep it. If you read it before Giant Size X-Men #1, it's a radically different comic than afterwards. I think what we hold on to as X-Men, at least fans like myself hold on to, isn't X-Men. I'm holding on to this great Claremont story, and I'm never going to get it ever because no one else can do that. And I have to reconcile with maybe Hickman can just give me something brand new that I never had before and treat it almost like a new comic. That can be exciting and something I can fall in love with, like what Venditti did with Hawkman.
Yeah, it's I get that point. I want to address some real quick. I did read Batman 321, Michael. I remember it being a really, really good story. I forgot how it ended, and also I guess Len Wein must have been writing either Batman or Detective in the early 300s, because in the high fours for Detective, because I think that's about the time Lucius Fox was created. So yeah, he wrote some great stuff. Now, back to the X-Men. I agree with your point. Yeah, Claremont's gone. He's not coming back. There were plenty of great X-Men stories post Claremont. But my biggest concern now is Marvel has gone so far left as a company that, yes, the X-Men always were metaphors for societal ills and all that, but once upon a time, those were real societal ills. they were people were legitimately fighting for civil rights. They were fighting for just gays were fighting for rights. Well, those battles have been fought and won, and I don't want to see the X-Men turning into yet another Orange Man bad type of book. And I'm Hickman might give you what you want. And to one of Morania's earlier points, 2 and only 2 X books, I'd be okay with that, and I would consider supporting this. But we're going to have 8 new books on top of that. And 6 months from now, we're going to get a Vita Ayala X book, a Leah Williams X book, and you know what direction those are going to go in. And at least 25, 30 years ago, there might have been too many X books, but one problem they didn't have was being overly preachy or the writers using the characters as their own political mouthpieces. That's what I'm afraid of will end up happening with the X books, whether whether that is Hickman's intention or not, because I see it in too many other Marvel comics. And I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope 6 months from now, maybe I'm reading a couple of them.
Yeah, that's my big fear. That's my problem is, we have to take what Marvel has been like. There's no reason. It's not like Marvel did something that signifies, hey, we made a radical change in the company. You have a reason to trust us now. Everything's the same. C.B. Cebulski's still the editor-in-chief. Sana Amnet's still in charge. Jordan White's still editing the X-Men. It's the 3rd reboot of X-Men in 2 years. Like, we don't have a reason to trust.
Yeah, I mean, how do you take when in the same month, I know I've touched on this before, you have Peter Parker or Spider-Man show up at Matt Murdock's apartment and basically layeth the smacketh down on him and acting like the Spider-Man of 30 years ago before he became the Avengers court jester and was wearing, Mockingbird's t-shirt. But then in the same month, you have him in Marvel Team Up, playing Freaky Friday with Kamala Khan and going, tee, I like putting on lip gloss. I can't trust a company that considers both of those concurrent canon.
Yeah.
So if that means that I, don't like something else by default, that goes back to what I was saying about in for a penny, in for a pound. It's hard to take anything Marvel does seriously when Squirrel Girl is one-punching Galactus.
Right. Well, that's the kind of the joke of Squirrel Girl, is that she's a stupid character that can beat anyone. And she was the Deadpool before Deadpool. And they could have actually made Squirrel Girl something really cool. But instead they decided to make her really stupid, replace her with Gwenpool. And I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. Like, you had this character that's been around since, I think Squirrel Girl was invented, the 70s?
She's been around no, 1990. Ditko. It was in a Marvel Summer Spectacular when they were doing. Summer spectaculars like 4 a year. I think it was in one of the summer ones in like 90 to 91.
Okay, I thought she was older than that, but okay, even still 90. That's what, almost 30 years now.
Yeah, so she actually, I think Deadpool beat her by about a year, and she was used in one story. I don't think was used again until Bendis.
Right, but the original Deadpool wasn't the joke character he is today. So Squirrel Girl was created as sort of a outside the box, like not like a joke of a character, like on purpose, to kind of add parody to comics.
Yeah, but they used to do that. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the character, the Impossible Man.
Mm-mm.
Well, he's the little guy with the green pointy head, and this is how well they used to use characters like that. He was in Fantastic Four number 11. He comes to Earth from the planet Pop-Up and basically makes a Mr. McPickle size pest out of himself. In the FF, there's nothing they can do to stop him because he's basically all powerful, and they figure out if the only way to get rid of him is to ignore him, and he gets miffed and goes away, never to be seen again until the tail end of one of the greatest Fantastic Four stories of all time, where Galactus comes to counter Earth to eat it, and the High Evolutionary sends his emissary, a talking golden gorilla named Gore, to our Earth to get the Fantastic Four's help. And they have a series of adventures getting to that point. One of them, they go back to the robot planet, and the Thing meets up with a character called Torgo, who was used in the story arc in the FF90s in the Lee Kirby era. It was a very well done story. Galactus ends up fighting the High Evolutionary and beats him, of course, and he's going to win, but he goes to digest the planet, and basically we find out at the end of the story that the Impossible Man camouflaged counter Earth and sacrificed the planet Pop-Up because every creature on Pop-Up was him, and he was every creature. And basically, Galactus was beaten by a case of terminal indigestion. Now, as absurd as it sounds, it worked. And then they kept the character around for a while, but actually made him an interesting, compelling character that I don't think, whereas Squirrel Girl was just a one joke told over and over and over again, that when in her own book, it was just, I don't know who that was written for, but they used to be able to take their jokey characters. Getting back to the Impossible Man. It's the first issue, the first full issue, he's back. When they get back to Earth, he decides, he finds out about comic books, and he decides he wants his own comic book. And so he invades the Marvel offices and basically strong arms them into giving him a book. And the FF get there, and they, Reed confronts Stan and says, "Look, just give him his own comic book, and he'll go away." He's right. He goes, "Yeah, that'll be okay for the time being, sure." So they leave, and Impossible Man's happy, and everything's everything's going to work out. And then somebody goes up to Stan and says, "Well, should I get to work on the Impossible Man issue?" And he's walking past, and he goes, "Forget it. I just said that to get rid of him." He goes, "Marvel doesn't have the time to waste on silly-looking characters," as he's walking past a Howard the Duck poster.
Yeah,
That's
Marvel used to be. Marvel used to be kind of self-aware like that. I miss that.
Absolutely.
Want to address here, we were talking about the X-Men. I kind of skipped over all this. Marania has said that hot dogs tasting like mustard and bigotry. Hashtag not my X-Men. 100% agree with that. Tom Taylor is like my worst nightmare when it comes to X-Men. End of thoughts said, thank you for realizing that about the X-Men not coming back. Now, do you think any reinvention is going to be good, or is it easier to try that bad thing, new things? I think my problem with it, X-Men, is I think Hickman might be able to pull something off and do something good, but like Marani says in the next tweet, I want 2 X-Men books and 2 X-Men books only, not 50 kabillion books. That's the problem that I have, is I see, okay, I can read what Hickman's doing, and I can say, okay, I feel like you have a plan. I feel like you're taking this very seriously. I've listened to the guy on interviews. I've seen him like on Twitter. I've seen him talking about his. I think Hickman is doing everything right to sell a book. He's got me interested. And then I go, and then Marvel's adding nine, Eric, new books along with it. And I'm just like, these are all going to be garbage. And you look at like Leah Williams, Teenie Howard, I think's got a book. It's a bunch of these bullshit creators. I'm like, none of these guys are going to pull off anything. I mean, I'm an X-Men snob. Back in the day when I read X-Men or Uncanny X-Men, and then I read the new Jim Lee X-Men, I didn't buy X Factor. I didn't buy New Mutants, and I didn't buy X. Well, I did buy X Force. Everyone bought X Force. I didn't want to, but I was just like, oh, it's a new #1. Like back, you guys are listening today. If you weren't buying comics back then, a #1 was a big deal once upon a time. Like Marvel might release like one #1 a year. Now they do like 5 or 6 a week. It's like, so having a new X title was like, what? You're an X Force? Like they're inventing a title. It was a big deal. So I got X Force, and plus it was kind of like I hated New Mutants. I thought they were like the kiddie version of X-Men. I was like, I don't want to read about a bunch of kid X-Men. Like, so when X Force came out, I was like, oh, okay, finally they're grown up and they're their own team. So, but I didn't even like all the X books back then, and they were people like you had Walt Simonson writing on X Factor. You had, I think, what's her name? Ann Nesenti, I think, wrote X Factor for a while.
Well, Walt's wife wrote a lot of X Factors too.
Oh, Louise Simons. Okay.
Yeah.
Chris Claremont wrote some of the New Mutant books. It wasn't for a lack of talent or anything on these books. It's just that I was like, there's the X-Men vision is what I like, and these other books are sort of, they're just wannabes. That's how I looked at them. So now, fast forward today, imagine, like, I if I wouldn't accept these great writers writing side books, why would I want to read a Leah Williams book about
exactly? That's my point earlier. The side books, at least back then, they weren't all as good as the main titles, but there was enough to compel you. Like I said, you got the characters. Now I think you're going to get the writers speaking their truth through the characters. And that's a huge difference between then and now.
Yeah. And they can't tell stories. They just don't. They run around.
They have no
villains are heroes. Heroes are villains.
Well, if you've grown up as a victim in your mind, that's going to reflect in your writing. Another quick aside here: we've been asked, Jack Nicholson versus Cesar Romero, Joy Newmar versus fight.
Quit derailing on us on this.
You gotta pay attention to the chat.
I do pay attention to the chats. I can't answer every single one and derail all the time. We'll get to that. We'll put that one on pause. We'll come back to it. I did see that one. We get asked, shenanigans. She-Hulk was Deadpool before Deadpool was created. That's sort of true. She-Hulk was never a farce, though. Deadpool has become a farce character. Squirrel Girl was created as a farce character. But let's see. Computer Bot says Marania. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Ash, what do you think of the October solicitations of X-Men? I haven't done that yet. I'm going to be doing that this weekend. Look for the previews video on that. More Batman. Everyone loves Batman. Everyone just wants to talk about Batman. I'm sitting here talking about X-Men. Everyone's asking me questions about Batman. All right, go ahead and derail us. No one wants to talk about X-Men.
Well, who are yours?
That's okay. So it's Jack Nicholson versus Cesar Romero. Jack Nicholson. I mean, going back into that time, the fact that they got Jack Nicholson to be Joker was just like mind blowing. It was like, Jack Nicholson is, for those of you thinking like today, like Jack Nicholson was a mega star. It was like, but he wasn't really Joker. He turned Joker into Jack. And for that reason, I have to pick Cesar Romero. I think Cesar Romero is a more iconic. What's your pick?
Okay, I'm going to go with Jack because Cesar Romero wouldn't even shave his mustache for the part.
Oh. All right. Fair. That's a fair.
No, but them getting Jack Nicholson to play the Joker probably would never have occurred to him. But if you go back to the first Superman movie, Gene Hackman. Now, Marlon Brando was the biggest star in the world, figuratively and literally, because he was the size of the land whale by then. but Gene Hackman was as big a star as there was in 1976 and 7 when they filmed it, and getting him to play Lex Luthor. Because at the time, you notice, like I said, the villain, Hackman and Brando both got billed before Christopher Reeve, and Nicholson got billed before Michael Keaton, because that was sort of like, that was like the big get in both of those movies, was to have the biggest star possible playing the villain. And you're right, that was Jack Nicholson. That wasn't the Joker, but it was a ton of fun. And Cesar Romero was great. I mean, all those characters, all the actors they got to play villains just had so much fun with them. It's hard to pick against any of them.
You're right.
Honestly.
Jack Nicholson's Joker was a ton of fun, but the question was, who's the best Joker? So I guess I'm interpreting the question to be like the best interpretation of the Joker.
Cesar Romero played a great Joker for the 60s, because in the 60s, Batman villains weren't killing. I mean, there was a good 20-year stretch where no one died in a Batman comic. So as far as like at the time, his was a more accurate portrayal of the Joker than Jack Nicholson probably was in '89, even though by that time the Joker was killing again.
Well, here's the thing too, like Cesar Romero is sort of Joker's DNA to this day. Like what Cesar Romero brought to the Joker has just been the iconic. Some people have deviated, right? Yeah, you got Heath Ledger's Joker, which is actually my favorite Joker. But everyone that's done Joker since, and especially in the comic books, takes away, I believe, from that Cesar Romero portrayal. He just sort of solidified that vision of what Joker is, and how his mannerisms, his nature, that's how I take it away. Did I lose you again?
I'll go on.
Oh, okay. But the best is God, I just said his name, Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger should have been in the mix. That isn't just, to me, the best Joker. That's like the best comic book villain portrayal performance I've ever seen, in my personal opinion.
Better than Jesse Eisenberg?
Yes. Julie Newmar versus Michelle Pfeiffer versus Halle Berry should be on the list. What's your pick?
Julie Newmar.
Michelle Pfeiffer. How could you not pick Michelle Pfeiffer?
How could you not pick Julie Newmar?
Because of Michelle Pfeiffer.
Because of Julie Newmar.
If Michelle didn't exist, Julie Newmar would get it, but Michelle exists. Burgess Meredith versus Danny DeVito versus that weird kid in the Gotham TV show.
God, honestly, I love Robin Lord Taylor's Penguin. God, I don't, it's strange. As different as all those characters were from the 60s show, it's hard to go against Burgess Meredith, because when I picture the Penguin, I know he's been portrayed as a ruthless, homicidal maniac in the comics, depending on what era and who's writing him. I always pictured him as more the kind of like scallywag, So to me, Burgess Meredith was the perfect Penguin.
I agree. Burgess Meredith is, again, like what I think about Cesar Romero. I think Burgess Meredith cemented how the Penguin as an iconic character. Danny DeVito's take was interesting. I always think that for me personally, I think the Penguin's a dumb character. I think that he only works for me in the 60s. Like, I don't think that he's that particular version of the character has aged into the new millennium. That it doesn't work for me. But I for an old school villain, if we were going to tell a Batman story as a period piece in the 60s or whatever, I think the villain, I like the Penguin fitting there. And I think Burgess Meredith brought a lot to the role.
Well,
Um,
I think the thing with Dane DeVito's Penguin is, you know, that version could not exist in society. He was too far gone. And I said, now, yeah, I could see Burgess Meredith, getting strange looks from people, but Dave DeVito's would just be like you would just there's no assimilating for that version. And I'm reminded of a Batman annual in the late '80s where the Penguin actually found love, and he had his happy ending. He found a woman, and he was gonna go straight on. And the next writer came along and forgot about it, and he went back to being the Penguin. But that I could have seen Burgess Meredith's Penguin actually finding the path to the straight and narrow and going off and having his happily ever after. No Penguin since then, whether it's Dan DeVito or Robin Lord Taylor or the way he's been portrayed in the comics, I could see that with. So for me it's definitely Burgess Meredith.
all right. Moving along here, Maranya says that Neil Adams made the blue and gray batsuit look dark and menacing. Uh, I kind of agree. I hate the blue and the gray batsuit with like a seething passion, but for some reason when Neil Adams does it, it's the least hating. like um, I'm like, this is supposed to be scary. You're wearing blue and
on that.
you're wearing Detroit Lions colors and you're supposed to be scaring people. Like no, like I like the old school Detective Comics look, just the black and gray, um, which they've kind of brought back a little bit. That influence, but uh, Ash and Eric, not a Heath Ledger fan, sorry, but hear me out on Cesar Romero and Jack Nicholson. You could tell they had a ball playing Joker. Ledger took the role a little too serious. Well, the fact that he ended up killing himself, yeah, I would say he did take the role too serious, perhaps, but that's going to be a subjective thing, right? Some people like the funny kind of Joker, the more lighthearted. I like the Joker as the sadistic, murdering, you know, thing that has been more the modern approach. Um, the killing joke Joker. That's a criminal. This is the kind of thing that Batman would actually devote his entire life to stop. Would be things like
But
this.
that's also a criminal that someone licensed to carry, like a Gotham City cop would have put one between the eyes at some point.
Maybe, but I mean, I think the Dark Knight film kind of explained how that character would work. Um, but that's again, that's like it's going to be a subjective thing. Some people are going to have different takes. I love it, and I also think it really helped that Heath Ledger just did a freaking bang up job performance.
He was the perfect Joker for that set of movies.
Yeah, yeah. Marania says the best portrayal of the Joker, bar none, is Mark Hamill, and it's hard to argue. It's for sure that is the best animated Joker. And I love Mark Hamill, so um, he did a really great job with the voice. Like I think when I hear Joker, I always think of Mark Hamill, and I also think of was it Chris Conroy? When I read Batman comics, in my voice or in my head, the Joker speaks like Mark Hamill, and Batman speaks like Chris Conroy. No matter what Batman I'm reading, that's the way. I don't hear Heath Ledger. I don't hear Christian Bale or anyone else. I hear those two voices.
Welcome back, Jimmy.
End of thoughts is I'm really tired of going back to the original when Batman's original suit would make no one happy. Okay. Same with Superman's original. No one is pushing for original, just the 90s or something. I'm not sure. These comments are too far back. I'm actually a defender of the Jared Leto Joker. Me too. I appreciated that the Jared Leto Joker was a reimagining for that particular world. It's obvious that the DC extended universe, with what's his nuts playing Lex Luthor, some of these characters, it's a total redesign, reimagining, and we've got we've got plenty of instances to see Joker being the classic portrayal. Having a separate instance where we get to see this more of a gangster style Joker, I was like, well, why not? Why not have a couple movies that way? I treat the movies like Elseworlds anyway, so.
Yeah, that's what's great about them. There are so many different interpretations of some of these classic villains that everybody eventually is going to get what they want, and I have no problem with that. I mean, I said I take each one as they come, and I said each Joker you can make a case for why they're, if not the best, one of, and I don't think any of them has been you can say no, that one was just terrible. Yeah, so that's what makes, since these movies have been around for so long now, that they've had time to be imagined, reimagined, different actors playing the characters and bringing their own uniqueness to them, and I say that's what kind of makes these movies fun.
Geek
Anyway,
Hero follow. Go ahead, Eric. Get it out. Oh, no, you're not going to talk. You're killing me, buddy. Geek Hero follows up his statement by saying, "I detest Heath Ledger's Joker." What the hell? I just supported your Jared Leto, and now you do this to me. What are we gonna do? Computer Robot says, Ash, which DC heroes would fit into the political? What? Which DC superheroes would fit into the political spectrum? I don't want to answer that. End of Thought says, best progressive writer in comics. Eric, did I lose you? Eric. Oh, Eric's gone. I don't know. He's still in the chat, but I don't hear him. He's not. Maybe his phone died or something. For best progressive writer in comics, well, they're all progressive, so now it's just a matter of who's the best writer in comics. But I think you mean actual, real progressive. In that case, it'd probably be Chip Zdarsky. What else? The Penguin is my favorite Bat villain, says Geek Hero. All right. Ra's al Ghul's mine. So that's... let's see. Jack was perfect for Bronze Age, late 70s, 80s, Stephen Hart Joker. Okay. Quirks is back. Welcome back. Until Tom King ruined him, Kevin Conroy was the first voice of Batman. Yeah, I guess if you if you read some of Tom King's Batman and then you put Kevin Conroy's voice in there, it's a little weird. I like the Adam West Batman. I did too when I was a kid. To me, it's like a different Batman. It's not the same. It's like when I watch James Bond movies. My James Bond is Daniel Craig, but I can go back and watch the old original Sean Connery ones, and they're great. But it's a total different era. It feels like a different character to me. I feel that way about the Adam West Batman. Let's see. I really like listening, interacting with you guys. You are all very understanding. Thanks, Geek Hero. I hear Adam West is Nightwing. I can't hear Burt Ward as that character. Burt is too cheerful. Adam could be serious when need be. That is true. Burt Ward is a weird Robin. Like, Burt Ward reminds me of Ben Shapiro. It's like Ben Shapiro running around as Robin. I don't think of Burt Ward like that at all. But let's see. Geek Hero. To be fair, I typed that before you backed up Jared Leto, but we all have different views. Also, Penguin rocks. So now that I backed up Jared Leto, you're gonna retract what you said. No, you can fair to have your opinions, man. If you hate Heath Ledger as Joker, that's your thoughts. I might try to just change your mind with reasoning, but we all react to the world and see things based on our own life experiences, and there's no real wrong when it comes to that. Let's see. End of thought. When would I ever credit anyone who treated fans like garbage? Let's see. End of thought. I failed Sean Gordon Murphy. So I think. Are you trying to say that I was wrong about who the progressive writer was? Like, I don't think Sean Gordon Murphy is a progressive writer. But I'm not following that. Eric, are you back yet?
I'm here.
Man, you haven't been gone for a while. I've been trying to
No,
solo
I've been
this.
back for a while. I'm not going to interrupt you.
Well, I guess not. I've been carrying this solo. It's like a concert, right? And then the band disappeared, and I just had to do like a guitar solo for 20 minutes to keep the audience still around.
Look, if you look at the thumbnail, see where it says Ash on Comics real big? That's the burden you must bear.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Can I get in on the most progressive writer?
Yeah, by all means.
Greg Rucka.
No, it's best progressive writer. It's not the most progressive.
Okay, best progressive writer. Oh, that's a good question.
That's a tough one, right?
It's almost like almost like an oxymoron.
Right. Well, I had one. I mean, there's one clear one. It's the only progressive writer that I buy.
Who did you say?
Chip Zdarsky.
Okay, but but I don't really think it comes out in his writing anymore.
You don't think?
So if we're talking about someone that can write progressive politics into their writing and still make it good?
No. I think it's best writer who is a progressive.
Okay. I was kind of thought he was more of like a. I know he's done some progressive stuff, but yeah, you're probably right actually. Because it's hard to find a better writer than him. Period. And the rest that fit that list, we really don't hear a whole lot about their politics. So yeah, I probably are right on that one.
Yeah, my answer was, well, they're all progressive. So the question is, which is just the best writer? But then I said, okay, well, the spirit of the question is based on who are like the ultra, vocal progressives. Because I think like Donnie Cates is probably progressive too, but he keeps his mouth shut and just writes comics. Same with Sean Gordon Murphy's probably less progressive. I think the guy's more of probably left of center guy, but Quirks loves all the progressive writers. He's gonna name them all. Matt Fraction. Don't forget Jason Aaron. Don't forget Brian Michael Bendis. He likes them all. So let's see. So Computer Robot says, guys, it's a lot of answers. Well, who are your guys' picks? Quirks has at least given us some answers, although he's not sticking to one. I'd like to hear the chat kind of do their thing. Jeff Lemire is a really good writer when he's inspired. So he's probably progressive.
Oh, he's definitely progressive. Yeah, he was one of the few guys. He was one of the first guys to wish all of us perceived Comicsgate people, a lifetime of misery, shall we say?
Yeah, I kind of came in after some of these guys, so I didn't witness the fury of some of them. You know what else is a really solid writer, and what could probably be even a better writer than he already is if he didn't just succumb to all this fucking Trump derangement syndrome? is Kurt Busiek. This is a guy who understands comics. He's written one of the best comic stories I've ever read in Marvels. If any of you guys haven't read Marvels with an S by Marvel Comics, written by Kurt Busiek, illustrated by Alex Ross. It's a masterpiece of comics in my mind, and Kurt Busiek wrote it. He wrote Astro City, which has a lot of great things. He's written great runs. Some people argue the best run that ever was on Avengers.
Well, I won't give him that, but it was a damn good run.
So, but the modern Kurt Busiek is just falling off a cliff, and you're just like, what's going on?
Yeah, he goes back to. I have a Red Tornado miniseries that he wrote in the 1984. It was pre-crisis. And I think he got to write some handful of Justice Leagues, and you could tell then that he was going to be a hell of a writer. And I don't even know what he's writing now, other than anti-Trump tweets.
Yeah.
Did he ever finish the Batman Prestige series he was on?
I think so. I think that book just sort of came and went.
Because I read the first 3, and then
that was the one where it's a vampire, right?
Well, it was the one where he was a product of Bruce's imagination or something like that. He kind of like created him, and no one thought it was real or whatever. It was an interesting. I was like, oh crap, I can't remember what it was called now. But it was a total reimagining of Bruce Wayne. He wasn't a rich kid. Alfred was his gay uncle, and it took place in the 60s. And I know the name of someone said it, but I remember reading the first 3. I think there was one to go, and honestly, he pissed me off so bad I didn't even look for the 4th one. But I don't remember seeing it on the shelf to not buy it.
Right. Well, stores probably just weren't ordering it. Quirks says we can all agree that Kelly Sue is the worst. I'm absolutely not a Kelly Sue fan, and she's the worst part of Aquaman the movie when you see her cameo. But you didn't know she was in it? Oh yeah, when you see her face, like you can't miss it. It's one of those things, and that you see it, and you're just like, oh god, now I can't unsee it, and it's always there. She like walks past the camera, and it's just her, and you're just like, ah. Yeah, and then of course she gets the Aquaman book, which I'm not really reading, but I hear people saying it's just middling. So
yeah, that's the best I've heard about it too.
I gotta tell you, what's his name? Gosh, I can't remember his name now. The guy who he writes Wonder Twins. I forgot his name.
Mark Russell?
Yes, that guy. Or Cecil Castellucci. Holy shit, that woman is terrible. Oh man. No. I forgot. I tribute to Eric Breen, the worst. Eric Breen, please drum roll. Who is the worst of the worst? The American treasure herself.
And thus endeth the Ash and Breen partnership.
Come on, you could do it.
I cannot allow you to besmirch the national treasure, Gabby Rivera.
Gabby is the worst. This is why our friend Englantine has the Gabby Awards. She's the worst.
I thought that was a term of endearment.
It is.
That I actually I have all 11 of those, and I started reading them, and I got through 4 and still haven't, steeled myself to go any further. Yeah, and that's a shame because I think issue 5 is the Splato Del Gato issue.
Oh man, it's like reading that series is just a chore. It's like an endurance.
It's here's the thing though. In all seriousness, it probably is the worst thing that anybody's ever written in comics, but it's bad to the point of you can laugh at it, as opposed to some of the other stuff that's just. I mean, America is it's cartoonishly bad, and and honestly though, I think like Mark Russell is smart enough to know that he's writing SJW trash.
Yeah.
Gabriel Rivera was writing what she felt was actually a good story. In her mind, she probably does think that was good. Because remember when some guys from 4chan started writing letters to her, posing as actual people that liked the book,
Right.
it was so obvious that she was being trolled, and she was like, "Oh, thank you so much. We're Brujejos now," or whatever the fuck she was saying. And it's it's hard to hate her because she's given so many YouTubers so much material that I mean, she's like the joke that keeps on giving, and some of these other guys are just offensive periods. And plus, she had the good sense to go away, because I promise you, as SJW as Marvel is, if she'd pressed it, she would have gotten another book.
Would she?
I kind of think so.
I think she might be so bad that even SJW Marvel is like, oh my goodness, what the hell is weird? What the hell is this? Because you got people like Mark Russell, right? He writes SJW trash, but he does have a semblance of understanding how to plot a story.
Oh yeah, I said he knows what he's doing. I don't think she did.
She absolutely didn't. Like, it was just complete and utter, like, just nonsense.
No, but she checked so many boxes that if she'd wanted to stay, they probably would have given her a writing coach, helped her through her next one, maybe, given like an actual writer to co-write with her. Because I mean, that was everything. She was everything Marvel wanted. Because like I said, when you have to completely match the character you're writing,
So you're
the
saying
only thing
she was a gay Latino alien from outer space?
Yeah, the only difference. Well, her mind definitely was. The only thing that they didn't have in common was one was a little easier on the eyes.
Oh, wow. Oh man, just the idea of Latino aliens just killed me. It's like, oh, just the complete lack of awareness that had. Oh, I was thinking of someone else too. Oh, so speaking of progressives ruining comics, I did a review. Did you get a chance to see my Batgirl review, or
I did, yes.
did you? Did you have any takeaways from it?
Other than I said again, we're right back to cosplay Batgirl.
So I read the book, and Female Furies is one of the most atrocious, offensively bad comics you're gonna read, not named America. It's worth reading to just see how ludicrous it is. I mean, come on. Darkseid has a baking contest for the Female Furies. It just makes you laugh at how ludicrous it is. The idea that this slave world of it's literally DC's version of hell. People are complaining about sexual harassment.
Uh,
Like,
yeah,
it's so comically like feminist. It's silly. So I expected, oh, Cecil, you're gonna give me some good material on this Batgirl book. And what I discovered instead is she wrote a Batgirl book that had no well, very very minor feminism. Like, there's this one scene where the villain makes some comment about her being a girl or something, and she's like, "Oh no, you didn't," like. But that's it. Like, the book itself doesn't go anywhere near it the way Female Furies did. And I discovered that when Cecil doesn't have something to rant about as far as like third wave feminism and men are bad and the patriarchy and all this stuff, like, you say what you will about Female Furies, it had something to say. It was a joke, but it was something to say. Batgirl had nothing to say. It was like, no, Cecil, try to write a book without the feminist nonsense, and she couldn't write anything. It literally was nonsense. I can't remember reading such an amateur book. I was like, how does this woman get a job in modern writing? The dialogue was just like, oh no, I'm gonna get you now. Oh, you think so? Like a 5-year-old would write this stuff. Like, it was just so. It's ridiculous.
help me out here. She did easily beat Killer Moth, did she not?
No, that's Killer Moth. Um, was kind of wiping the floor with her. And then she falls and crashes into this dark pit of some underworld underneath Gotham City that I didn't know existed. It's just it was so weird because I was expecting it something to roast like Female Furies, but it was like almost like the opposite. It was like, I'm gonna tone back and not do any of my crazy SJW nonsense. I'm just gonna try to tell a story. And then it was like, the idea, like, you tell writers all the time, write what you know, and I identify with that a lot. Like, as a wannabe writer, it's like there are a million things I could never write about. Like, you got to stick within what you understand, and you can have something to say. Once you took away the feminism, it's like Cecil doesn't know anything. So the story was so empty and vapid, of just like, oh, I guess I'll just tell a story of Batgirl beating on a D-list villain of hers and then losing and having the worst dialogue, and then not able to like tell a story of a fight. And I covered this in my review for those who haven't seen it, about like people who like action movies or action stories or comics understand that a fight isn't a story in itself, right? It's not a complex story, but it is a story, and there's a drama between a fight, and this is why people watch things like MMA or boxing or whatever, because that struggle has its own drama that plays out. And a good writer that understands action stories and things like that can utilize that to their advantage to tell the story. And Cecil Castellucci just doesn't. It's just random panel after panel of just swinging, punching, kicking, rolling. There's no coherence to anything. It's just draw a panel of characters clashing and saying, I'm gonna get you. Next panel, characters clashing randomly saying, oh no, you're not, I'm gonna get you instead. Next panel. It's like, that's the level of the writing. You're just like, how do you get a job? How
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just flabbergasted.
I guess my short-term memory is worse than I thought, because I had in my head that she won that fight.
She may have.
I'm
She
glad
she does.
she didn't, because because Killer Moth did give Batman fits throughout the ages. But now let me ask you though. Okay, so it wasn't filled with feminist propaganda, but do you have a desire to read the next issue?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, the only reason I read this issue was, like I said, I was expecting it to be Female Furies level nonsense. But to her credit, it didn't have that. But it caused me to notice something unexpected, and that was what I just explained about how once you take away all the SJW bullshit, they have nothing left to write about, or at least she doesn't. She just didn't know. It's like, can you just tell a story of a good guy versus a bad guy? Guess. Like, half the book were these like 3 animal characters trying to steal something from this weird complex that's not explained. And then they have nothing to do with anything. It's just Luther shows up and makes an offer to this cyborg creature Oracle. It's nonsense. Anyone that cares, I'm not going to drag the stream on anymore about this. If you care, you can watch the review. It just shocked the hell out of me, though. I was like, wow.
Well, my question would be, Batgirl there's not been a single issue of Batgirl since Barbara got out of the wheelchair, written by a man.
Well, men can't write women.
Well, okay. Mark and Draco writes Supergirl. Now, I realize he's gay, but still.
Oh, yeah, gay men can write women, especially if they're raging SJWs like Mark and Draco. So,
but Supergirl isn't filled with SJW crap under on the books he's written. But my point is, I said, if I would like to see one good Batgirl run. I don't think we've gotten one. I'm not a bigger Oracle fan than Batgirl for starters, but because I'd rather see Stephanie Brown as Batgirl, or hell, even Cassandra Cain again before Barbara Gordon, because I said Oracle should have been the character going forward, but it's like they keep giving it to whether it's Gail Simone or Hope Larson, was that her name? I'm sure Jody Hauser's on deck. It's like, can we have one good one? At some point. Is that asking too much in modern comics?
Yes, way too much.
Yeah, that's kind of a place. Was even though DC does a lot more better than Marvel, they still have their hard and fast rules, and obviously no man is ever going to get to write Batgirl. Yeah, because she might start representing the patriarchy, but
Well, I think part of Batgirl being written by a woman, in part, to be fair, I honestly think that, first of all, I do believe Batgirl was created to appeal to women originally. Same with Supergirl. I believe some of these characters were creations by an industry who realized, hey, we're only targeting 50% of the potential audience. We do know that some girls read our books. Let's create some books that girls might like even more. And so he saw some of these books. Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane. Archie's been hitting the female market for an eternity. And it's totally fine. Like, that's fantastic. And I do think the early parts since like Rebirth of Batgirl were not necessarily meant to be like SJW comics, but more DC's attempt to just be like, hey, let's have writers that maybe can tap into that female audience, right? For good or ill, whatever the you can take your own takeaway about how well it was executed. But now, obviously, you can confuse that, and it can be a gender politics thing. Cecil Castellucci, I don't know anyone that likes her as a writer. Like, I don't think, say what you want about Gail Simone, but Gail Simone's got fans. I mean, she's a joke, but there are a lot of people who'll be like, I like Gail Simone's one of my favorite writers. I was like, all right, well, okay.
She wasn't always a joke.
Okay, maybe. It's still debatable.
She took over for Chuck Dixon and actually listened to Chuck when he taught her how to continue that series. And for the first, couple dozen issues, if you didn't know there'd been a change in the writing, you wouldn't know Gail Simone had taken over for him, because she just took what he did and ran with it. And so that was a book of all women that was filled with badass girls kicking guys' asses every issue, but at no point did it feel like propaganda.
Fair,
That's gone now.
well, fair enough. Honestly, I don't think the Gail Simone books I've read recently feel like propaganda. I think Gail Simone just writes silly Billy garbage books. Like, she writes things that obviously have no level of research. Like, she doesn't spend any time trying to learn what she's writing about. So she writes moronic stuff. She writes characters like my problem with the Hot Shots book. It was like, okay, you're the baddest mercenaries on the planet, and you don't know anything about guns or like anything that anyone with any sort of military training would understand. Like, you're just, she comes across like a hairdresser writing military fiction. Like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and it's ludicrous and it's silly. And then her characters are constantly like, oh, we're best girlfriends, and it's like,
Well, yeah,
okay,
she doesn't have to try anymore.
right. So my problem with her books, at least the recent ones, aren't that she's trying to push some propaganda. It's just they're a joke. They're just, and not the good kind. Like, it's just like,
Yeah,
oh.
Secret Six was the last good thing she did.
Let's see. Comic Quirk says the real question is, can we just get one damn good Penguin story? And the answer is no. Maranya Valkonen, I don't know why I had to say the full name. Maranya says, blame Gail Simone for wanting to fix Batgirl because that was her favorite character and she couldn't stand Barbara Gordon in a wheelchair, so she had to fix Batgirl and make her Barbara again. Yay.
Yeah, and I guess if a male writer had tried that maybe 3 or 4 years later, could you imagine the outcry for taking a disabled character and making her ableist?
Ah,
She should have waited, because then we might still have Oracle. Of course, we'd have SJW Oracle, but
yeah. I mean, I'm of two minds of this whole thing. Barbara Gordon is my Batgirl. Like, that's who I want as Batgirl. I don't want any other Batgirls. I hate that they made other Batgirls. I'm not a big fan of Batgirl to begin with because, as you know, I'm not a legacy person. I don't like tokenized characters. I get why DC did it back in the day, um, and I'm fine with it existing. I do like Barbara Gordon. Man, what Sean, speaking of just plugging my boy Sean Murphy over here, what Sean Murphy does with Batgirl is awesome. Sean Murphy makes Batgirl a character I would want to read. Like,
I have no problem with in the Murphyverse.
yeah, his version of Batgirl is awesome, and like the way she like sets Batman straight, I was like, and he does it without ever trying to masculinize her, right? He writes her as smart and thoughtful, and she's got a completely different like rational perspective that Bruce Wayne doesn't have, and it kind of reminds me, not that there's like any sort of sexual relationship between the two, but it kind of reminds me of how men and women complement each other, right? In a good like healthy relationship, um, a woman has an extremely important perspective to guide a man, and vice versa, and that's like a healthy thing. When I read Sean Murphy's book, like I said, it's not any sort of romantic or sexual relationship, but it's still a relationship between a man and a woman, and it feels right and good, and you're like, oh, this is a Batgirl I can get behind. This makes sense why she's so important in Batman's world, you know. Um, And that's a strong writer, I think. And this idea that we constantly have to make these female characters more like men, to me, just seems insulting. It's like, so you're saying that women who aren't like men are inferior? Like, to me, that's like a demeaning way of looking at women. Instead of looking at women for being the strength that women are, for all the things that they're not like men, we have to go, oh no, we can show you that women can be just like men. The reality is that they're actually not. So you're giving us this delusion. You're basically saying women are as good as men because I made something up to define this, or to support it. And then when we get to the reality of the fact that women don't have the same physiology as a man, then you take that away, and now where's your argument? And regardless, how much you're able to bench press doesn't make you more or less valuable as a person. There's so many other qualities to a person and what they can bring to the table for, every given type of circumstance.
I saw a good comment from Geek Hero. She could have walked and still been Oracle. I'd have been okay with that. She could have done her job from her tower, and then, when the job was big enough to warrant it, she could, come down off the tower and come kick some ass with her teammates. That would have worked.
Or maybe like she can walk, but she still has like a minor disability. Like she has to have like a cane. Like she can't be Batgirl anymore. Like she can walk, but she's still like not super, fit to go fight crime. She has a limp or.
She did some stories where she would get attacked, and she kept a couple of those, what they call it, staves, or she would just she was a badass in her wheelchair. She could she just like kick the crap out of guys coming at her. But either way, but like I said, I mean, the way she's portrayed now, the only time she's done right in DC proper now is when a good writer like a Tomasi or somebody uses her in detective. I mean, during the whole thing, there was a detective story arc where Batwoman shot Clayface dead because he'd gone evil, and he was about to reach a level of power to where he literally would have been Superman class. And of course, and the Bat team was split on what to do, and half of the camp wouldn't even entertain the thought of putting him down, and Kate said no, F this, and shot him dead, which probably was the right thing to do. But the person that was kind of making the case for trying to keep everybody in line was a very sharp Barbara Gordon, which was such a departure from the cosplay Batgirl in her own book, and the way she'd been portrayed by whether it was Gail Simone or Hope Larson. And she looked like a woman, acted like a woman, was this if not the smartest person in the room, didn't take much of a backseat to Bruce, and that was that Batgirl I could handle, but none of the writers of her own book ever come close to that.
Right. Well, I mean, and Batgirl hasn't been given any real good writers. End of Thought makes a comment I want to address. He says, by the way, it would seem like Dan Didio is doing what you want, Ash. No legacy, loves long, drawn-out stories. Not saying that to be rough, but this is your time in comics. They are catering to your likes at DC and Marvel. No, there's a drastic misunderstanding here. I don't like legacy characters. What that means is don't make them in the first place. But there's a thing is Barbara Gordon's been around now for a long time, right? There's Dick Grayson has been around for a long time. Wally West has been the Flash almost as long or longer than Barry Allen.
For a while, it was very close.
Like, yeah, well, either way, like, so I want Barry Allen to. I wanted Barry Allen to stay dead. I think one of the dumbest things DC's ever done is bring Barry Allen back. I was happy. Wally West has been Flash since I've been collecting comics. Like he's been around since what, the mid '80s.
Yeah, he became the Flash right after the Crisis, and was basically the Flash for 20 about 20 years before they brought Barry Allen back in Rebirth, and then there were two Flashes for a while, but then you knew Wally was on the clock as soon as they did that. But Jeff Johns loves the originals, and because Green Lantern was gone for years, but then Hal Jordan came back.
Yeah, they should not have brought these characters. So I don't want, for example, I hate X-23. Wolverine, one of my is for a long time. If you would have asked me back in the '90s, who's your favorite actually comic book character in general, I'd have said Wolverine. Now Wolverine's played out and been changed since then, but that was the case. So you'd think, oh well, you like X-23, right? No, I hate X-23, and I hate Gabby even worse. Like it's just, well, maybe I don't hate her worse. No, I think after Tom Taylor's all new X-Men run, I think I hate Gabby less than X-23. I hate that character. But it's not so much that I just want to go through and destroy everything. Number one, I realize that other people like these characters too, and these characters have a place. I want to see characters done well, right? Okay, you've given me Barbara Gordon. She's in the world now. I read Sean Gordon Murphy. Sean Gordon Murphy writes Barbara Gordon fantastic. He goes, I'm going to sell you on this character. Even though you think you don't like it, watch what I do. And I go, oh, okay. I used to, same thing. Hawkman, it's not related, but I used to feel the same about Hawkman. Anyways, so while I don't like these characters, I'm not saying that's impossible for me not to buy into them with a good writer. That's ultimately what I want. Dan Didio's taking the opposite approach. Dan Didio is saying, I don't like Dick Grayson, so I'm going to find a way to make him stupid so that fans will hate him so we can work him out of it. That's not the way to handle it, right? If you don't like Dick Grayson, hire someone that can make you like Dick Grayson, right? I don't like Barbara Gordon, so my solution is sell me on Barbara Gordon. Change my mind. That's what I want. I would, if I were the editor-in-chief of DC or Marvel, pare things down. I think it's stupid to have... At one time, Marvel had 7 Wolverines. They've cleaned it up since a little bit, but 7 freaking Wolverine characters at one time. Yeah, that's just ludicrous. And sometimes you have to piss fans off for the sake of your business. I think Dan Didio in his mind thinks he's doing some right things, like killing off Wally West. Or sorry, he hasn't killed Wally West off. He's just fundamentally destroyed. But the way he's going about it is all wrong. Number one, just kill the character. If you need to get rid of the character out of your universe, do it in an honorable way. Speaking of the Flash, we can refer back to Crisis on Infinite Earths back in the early 80s. They got rid of Barry Allen, but they did it in such a heroic, heartfelt way that it was talked about for years afterwards, where fans were just like, oh man, remember when Barry Allen gave his life? Like, that was, Barry Allen was gone. I'm not saying that they had motives. I don't know what the motives were, but let's just assume for argument that they were, like, we want to get rid of him. You succeeded in getting rid of him, and you did the character right. You respected the character. You gave the fans a send-off and a way to feel good about it. What Dan Didio's doing is the opposite. He's just like, oh, you like Nightwing? I don't want him around. And I can't just kill him. Everyone get pissed. I'm just gonna drive him into the ground so that fans will beg me to get rid of him, and then I'll be the hero. Bullshit. Screw you, Dan Didio. Oh, you like Wally West? Remember what got you back into DC Comics? That great Rebirth issue by Jeff Johns, one of the finest comics I've ever read. It'll bring tears to your eyes. It's so freaking heartwarming. They brought back Wally West. 2 years later, screw you. We're going to turn Wally West into a murderer. That's the wrong way to do things. Like, no, I don't like legacy characters. I think there's way too many Robins running around. Like,
And I don't know about you, but I don't consider the original sidekicks to be legacy characters per se, because they've been around in some cases almost as long as the originals. Because like Wally was created about 2 or 3 years after Barry Allen. You know, obviously Dick Grayson has been around since 1941, I think. Yeah, Speedy's been around for, since the early 40s. Wonder Girl came along, in, I want to say late 50s, early 60s or whatever. So, I mean, they've been around forever, but I agree with you on the endless Wolverines, like the X-23s. When she was her own person, that was okay when they, because she was used all right for a while in the X-Men. Now she's just, like I said, it's useless character at this point.
She's so useless. She is utterly useless. She doesn't bring anything to the table, and she brings controversy and bullshit. She was replacing Wolverine. She's running around calling herself Wolverine. It's like, no, you dumb bitch. You're not Wolverine. And this is one of the things that I'm going to rant about for, a little bit, because I don't understand this audacity of these characters. Like Kate Bishop running around, I'm Hawkeye. No, you dumb bitch. That dude right next to you, Clint Barton, that guy's Hawkeye. You are an imposter. In real world, no one would accept this. You would be looked at as a jerk. Like, why are you calling yourself this? You're the fake one. But in comic books, the writers pass it off as if it's like everyone's like, oh, that's cool. We like her, and it's like, no, that wouldn't be. Jane Foster running around calling herself Thor. You're not Thor. And the writers understood this because they put this in almost every single issue where they'd have a character confronting Jane and being like, you're not really Thor, and having to fight off, some man telling her she wasn't what she was. And it's just like, this is you being aware what you're doing is stupid, but trying to pass it off anyway. And then you'd have Thor himself go to her and say, like, I approve. You are a good Thor. And, like, they had to sell the character using the original character to, like, prop her up. And I'm like, this is stupid. No one with any sort of self-respect would do this. They would say, I'm, like the way DC did it. Wally West was like, look, there's already a Flash. I'll be Kid Flash, right? Robin didn't grow up and said, I'm going to call myself Batman now. No, he called himself Nightwing. Like, it just, this idea of like, I'm going to just be this other person and take their man. That's what assholes do. And comics aren't supposed to be about assholes. Sorry.
That was a quality rant.
So, see, Didio is trying to hide his failure by still working at DC because that is his safety heaven to avoid thinking about his past failures. Here's the thing. I honestly think Dan Didio is a quality publisher. Right? DC has a tough road. They are not Marvel. They have to work twice as hard and pay twice as much to get the best talent, do things. They don't have the IPs that Marvel has. They don't have the freaking Disney Marvel Cinematic Universe that everyone just loves these days. DC fights an uphill battle. The fact that Dan Didio has done what he's done with this company and turned them and kept them like in the running, like that is admirable. I think he understands some good things. I like what they're doing as far as like trying to work with retailers. You know, you don't see DC doing the predatory practices at the level that Marvel does. They push a little bit. They do things. They still do their, you know, variant, you know, their A and B covers for their books. DC's just trying to make some money. You know, but look at how they're doing this in recent event with the Year of the Hero. Honestly, if you look at it objectively, you may be tired of some of the things, but from a publishing standpoint, they're not trying to take advantage of fans. They're doing things right. They're putting those books in Walmart to try to get other, you know, newbies into the hobby. DC actually maintains sort of like what you'd call customer reps that actually talk to the stores to get information and feedback to communicate two ways between the LCSs and the publisher. Marvel doesn't do this. There's so many ways that DC does things right from a publishing standpoint. The problem with Dan Didio is that he also wants to be in creative control. Eric, you might get this because you're a sports fan. I used to see this all the time, like because I'm a football fan, and it's like he's like a Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. It's like he's the owner, but he also wants to be the general manager. And it's like, no, you stop. You hire someone who knows what they're doing. If you're the publisher, what Dan Didio should do is be like, Jeff, you're my right hand man. I'm going to put you in creative control because you're the best in the business. I'm going to sit there and publish, and you're going to control our creative development, and together we're going to build a powerhouse. That's what should happen. But Dan's ego gets in the way, and he thinks that I don't like what Jeff does. I want to do it my way. And so he's driving DC based on his personal preferences, and he's not. We've seen it. He's not a creative visionary. He doesn't do things the way the fans want.
Can I piggyback on what you said?
Yeah, go.
Yeah, Jerry Jones, was the owner and the general manager. And at the beginning, he had Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, et cetera, et cetera. And they won 2 Super Bowls and won a third one after their egos got to the point where they couldn't coexist. And Jimmy Johnson quit, but there was enough left to get one more out of it. Since then, 20-something years, 2 playoff wins. Now, where that fits into DC, what you were saying, Dan Didio, Jeff Johns was kind of like his Jimmy Johnson. And the creative, the writers and artists, were so good they got to the point to where there were a couple months they were actually beating Marvel. Then, Jeff Johns left, which gave Dan Didio even more free reign because they survived New 52 and Rebirth, put them near the top again. And now, a little over a year later, Marvel is beating them into the ground every month.
DC had Marvel by the balls. Rebirth was an unmitigated success. It would have been even better had they not alienated so many fans with the New 52. Getting fans to come back after you pissed them off and made them quit is a very tough thing to do. I tell you, because I was away for 20 years. I think Eric can tell you too. I mean, he was once a mega buyer of comics, and it took a lot to get him back. It's a tough thing. Jeff Johns worked magic, and just read that Rebirth, DC Universe Rebirth #1. It will hook anyone. If you like comics, you read that, you're like, I want to read DC now. You may think DC is the dumbest thing in the world. You read that and you're like, oh, this is how comics should be.
I think Jeff Johns was the only reason why the New 52 survived, period, because if that had been left to Didio's devices alone, I don't know if DC survives.
Yeah.
Because Johns was in there, doing the best he could with what DC had turned into. And then I've got to believe that Rebirth was his vision. And now that he's gone from creative to Dio, well, you see, I mean, it might as well be the new 52 again. It's got all those old tropes are coming back.
Yep.
And what do you know? Like I said, it's not that Marvel, Marvel, all they have to do is show up, spell their name right, and get an A in comics. Because, like I said, there's no such term as DC zombie. Marvel fans will they'll just take it. I mean, there aren't as many as there used to be because, like I said, the entire industry has shrunk. But Marvel fans will take, more Marvel fans will take what Marvel gives them. DC has to earn everything they get, and if they're not firing on all cylinders, you get what's happening now, and taking away the creators that people wanted on Superman and replacing it all with Bendis. People want the Legion back. Well, not anymore. They don't. People want the Justice Society back. Hold your breath. Bendis might decide he wants that too. I'm hearing rumblings that Snyder and his bunch are running the clock out because, big shock, creative clashes with the Portland Mafia. And if that happens, God help them.
If they lose Jeff Johns, I mean, they're done.
What if Snyder leaves and takes Tinian and Tomasi with him? I mean, I don't know where they'd go because Marvel can't afford them, but maybe they just go creator owned and hell, that if they all went over to Image and started creating shit, Image might be the number 2 again.
I think Marvel could win over these guys if they were willing to do some profit sharing. I think that would be a way. See, if I were publisher at Marvel, that's what I would try to do is lure these guys away. And I know I don't have the money to just offer them straight up cash. So I might say, like, look, you want to come over and write, like to Scott Snyder, I'd be, well, see, I got Hickman doing this whole thing, so that doesn't work. But like, just imagine the Hickman thing didn't happen. I'm like, Snyder, I want you to write X-Men. Snyder to me is the perfect guy to write X-Men. He's a big idea thinker. He likes cosmic stories. He likes writing all these team interactions. He understands how to get characters to relate. One of the reasons why Justice League is so good is just watch how these characters interact with each other. You love it. It's like, do you like these characters? Do you like Superman? Yes. Do you like Batman? Yes. Do you like Wonder Woman? Yes. Do you like Flash? Yes. Do you like to see how they interact with each other and play off each other? Yes. Do you like it when it's done really well? Yes. Okay, congratulations. You like Scott Snyder's Justice League. Like, that's what made X-Men such a success, was Claremont says, I'm going to make you fall in love with all these characters, and then I'm going to watch you or take you along these adventures where you get to see them interacting with each other and playing off each other and sometimes conflicting with each other while they're having these adventures, and you're just going to just gobble it up like a soap opera, and you love it. Snyder's perfect. Anyways, I'm derailing again.
No, I'm not sure how the Hickman X-Men thing came. And I realize that Marvel is paying lip service to trying again, but I don't know who's responsible for, like, Ewing's Hulk or Hickman's X-Men, but I don't think that lines up with Sana Amanat's vision of Marvel being a lifestyle brand and putting more of an emphasis on young girl heroes for the young girl audience that they covet. I'm not sure that Marvel, I mean, it makes perfect business sense. I don't know that would line up with what Sana Amanat wants Marvel to be, assuming there even still is.
Well, you're not being fair to the hypothetical here. So I'm kind of like pretending I get hired on to be Sana Amanat's position. She's out, and now I'm take her place. This is what I do, right? Like,
No,
Um,
I know what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying.
yeah, Marvel's trash. As long as it's on Omnauts there, it's Marvel's trash. They don't have. This is why there's doing 10 different X books full of garbage, and then so Hickman is going to sell you on it's like, I believe Hickman's good. Oh, he's got his reputation and okay, great. And then you're going to get 9 shit books that go along with it, that are all just utter trash. And so Sana Amnok gets what she wants, and they get to lure. They add that little lure of credibility by having Hickman be on the flagship title, and you're just like, oh, okay. We'll see how it all plays out. All I'm saying is, I think that if I'm Marvel, and obviously Marvel's got a completely different agenda than me, which is why they're not doing this stuff. But if I'm Marvel and I care about making good comics and being the biggest in the business again, I focus on getting the talent. That's how they built themselves in the 80s. People might forget, DC used to be the biggest comic company, and then Marvel crushed them. I think in like the late 70s they took over, and then it just kept sailing on into the 80s. And Jim Shooter era was just dominant, because Jim Shooter was like, I'm going to lure every single talented person over to my house. And it was like George Perez and I think one other person that held out. And every talented person came to Marvel. This is what Marvel needs to do today. I would find a way to get Scott Snyder. I'd find a way to get Jeff Johns. And I would say, look, we can't offer you big paychecks up front, but what we can do is you put your reputation online. Scott, I'm going to give you X-Men, and we're going to give you percentage of the revenue. So the more books you sell, the more money you make, right? Just like you would be if you were going off and to do image books, which is a perfect deterrent to prevent them from going off and doing image books, because they go,
Yeah.
I can get revenue sharing with the X-Men license, or I can get revenue sharing with my own brand that no one even knows. I'm going to sell more X-Men books. Then you give Jeff Johns, right? Jeff Johns, put him on something like Captain America, fix that freaking character again. You this is what they could do. DC would collapse. I mean, I don't think they would collapse. They're still DC. They would suffer a grievous wound. They'd just be bleeding out all over the floor, because Johns and Snyder is what keeps this company afloat right now, right? The ability to people to go, you know what, it's a shit show, but at least we still have, Jeff. People are still invested in Doomsday Clock. Snyder's Batman plus his Justice League stuff is good. James Tynion is also assisting with the Justice League stuff. And then you've got Tomasi on Detective. You kind of got that other camp of people, and you're like, well, half of DC is still good. But you take that away, and it just becomes the Portland Mafia Brigade at DC. Like you said it best, there's no such thing as a DC zombie.
Well,
people read DC because it's good, not because it's their character. People will read shitty Spider-Man, as evidenced by the fact that there's what we had that last tally, we counted 14 Spider-Man books. People will read the shittiest Spider-Man book, but people don't want to read shitty Batman or shitty Superman or almost any DC book.
No, and the sad thing is, it's pretty obvious what side Dan DiDio is on. And like I said, if Snyder takes his bunch with him, and and they all walk out the door, you're right, they're in massive trouble. Because right now it seems like Bendis and King are driving the bus.
Yeah, they are. I'm so glad that King is leaving Batman. For 2 reasons. Number one, because I like Batman. But number two, I've actually used this to defend King for a long time by saying, people go, "Oh, King is shit. King is shit," and my response would be, "But he's the top comic, right? His comic is the number one comic in the industry, so you can't really argue with success." And then people say, yeah, but he's writing Batman, and Batman's always going to be number one, which is now obviously not true. But so I'm like glad. Okay, well, look, if King, if it's true that King only sells because he does Batman, then being off Batman should expose King. I think he's still going to sell books. I think there's a legion of people out there that are just trained to think that Tom King is something special, and so when he releases something, they're like, "Ooh, this is special! I have to get it. It's Tom King."
Well,
But
the first issue of that'll sell well, but it'll settle into the 40s.
people still talk about Miracle Man as if it was fucking Watchmen. Like, I don't get it. Even still, 40s in today's era, 40s is solid.
Well, no, but I'm saying, I said if you, I said, Batman, the title Batman, the title Amazing Spider-Man have a built-in audience of about 40,000 that'll buy it no matter what or who. Because I said, when Dan Slott was writing Spider-Man and Chip Zdarsky was writing the really good Spectacular, Slott was outselling him 3-1. And Zdarsky's book was 3 times as good. But if you'd reverse that, if suddenly Zdarsky had been on Amazing and Slott had been on Spectacular, Zdarsky's would have sold 3 times as much. It's like the trade dress on those 2 books have the most built-in name recognition in comics. And without that, I said without King, without having Batman, the Batman title, his Bat and the Cat. Well, I said the first issue will sell well because it is Batman, but it will not come close to the numbers he got on Batman.
We'll see. Heroes in Crisis did pretty well. but
Heroes in Crisis, that's true, but it was a massive, and yeah, you might end up being right on that. But anyway, Ash, on that note, I think I'm going to have to call it.
Well, that's pretty abrupt, but I don't disagree with you. Let's just address a couple of the real chats before you take off here. Maranya says Marvel had George Perez for a while. His Avengers was freaking amazing. If I recall correctly, that was after the Jim Shooter era.
No.
Perez eventually did come over to Marvel, and obviously Perez did come to Marvel for that short stint for Infinity Gauntlet, which is legendary.
Yep. Perez was at Marvel in 1975 to when he left to do Teen Titans in 1980.
Spider-Man's loyalty should be a model for any aspiring entrepreneur. That guy who cried at the new Star Wars trailer is all. I don't understand what that is.
Yeah, my head too.
Find something that will replace Westerners' religion. Sorry but true. And boom, they don't want to pay you. They will be your defenders online for free. Says in a thought. Spider-Man is a symbol like that. I wish it wasn't so. And men would advance themselves more and have self-respect. Computer Robot says, Ash, you and Professor Geek would have a good debate on legacy heroes and Tom King. Maybe. Marani says, King's Visions maxi series was damn good. I've heard both ways. I've heard some people go, they love it. Some people go, meh. Much like Mr. Merrill. He's always divisive. Like, there are people who love Heroes in Crisis. Let's see. End of Thought says, they won't only pay you. Not they won't pay you. I'm lost. I'm sorry. End of Thought. Quirk says, nothing is more of a symbol than Superman. Maybe. End of Thought says, but no one defends it like Spider-Man. So, guys, Breen is turning into a pumpkin, and we don't want that to happen. And so, thank you, Eric, for joining me on our first sort of, I mean, it's not our first time streaming together, but it's kind of our first time doing this, working out the kinks of us, just you and I doing shit.
Yeah, hopefully the next time we'll be able to get it back on the computer so I can, type in the chat, because it's hard for me to get to the computer where I am.
Yeah. Well,
But yes, thank you to everybody that came out and the 10 that hung with us till now.
yeah. I really appreciate it. So I had a lot of fun talking to you guys. Thanks for being interactive in the chat. This is why I do the live stream also, so you guys know, like, I could just do videos. You guys seen I do a million videos. So I like to talk and actually have the interaction. And hopefully on future videos, we can do things like open up the, to have guests on, and, maybe if you want to say something live, we can throw out the links. You can come on and just be even more interactive. Thanks for all your support. Having someone listen to you makes talking like all the worth it. And yeah, remember that gummy bears are the best candy.
No, I think listen to Maranya. Take care, you guys. And Milky Ways are the best candy. Milky Ways rule, and gummy bears drool.
All right, and with that, we're out. See you next time.
Thank you guys very much.